Simpsons Index, an online spreadsheet that is also a podcast. This is the podcast.
Coming to you out of SideQuest Studios, this is the Simpsons Index, episode 159. Hello out there, I'm your host, Elliot Jay O'Neill, and joining me here as always, except when he's not, BT Calloway.
Hoi hoi.
And joining us all the way over from Melbourne and England, respectively, it's Paul and Paul from One Good Thing podcast. How you going, guys?
Hey there! Hello from the city of England.
And the country of Melbourne.
Yep.
It's fantastic here.
It's cramped here.
The proud island nation of Melbourne.
So yeah, this is the Simpsons Index, the podcast where we watch and review 3 episodes of The Simpsons at a time, but there's a twist. Each episode must come from a different decade. But tell the good folks about your podcast, One Good Thing.
Most certainly. We are a podcast that watches cinematic dreck in the hopes of finding good things to say about it, because no film is truly worthless, we believe, erroneously, but also so far correctly. We managed to find good things in absolute stinkers like Paul Blart Mall Cop 2, Crimes of Grindelwald,
Jack and Jill.
Jack and Jill.
Just list all the Adam Sandler ones that we've seen.
I was trying to think of a non-comedy one that's very obviously shit, but no, they are mostly comedy ones that are like the super obviously shit ones.
Yeah.
Interesting. Have you attempted Battlefield Earth yet?
We have
Nice.
conquered.
We did. We found many of Barry Pepper's snorts to be highlights.
Well, yeah, I came to you guys via Shut Up and Take My podcast, and especially, your episode with them reviewing The Predator was the first episode of your podcast that I checked out, and that was just hilarious. The vitriol was delicious.
That was a challenging one, I will say.
Film and setup, I think. There's nothing quite like doing a podcast with 3 lively, energetic people who all share a room when the 2 of us are sitting alone in cold rooms in other parts of the world.
Yeah, we can't relate or understand that level of intimacy or enthusiasm.
Homily. Yeah. Actually, the first I heard of you was doing the is it the 100th episode spectacular with Baby Beard?
Oh, yeah, the big Shut Up and Take My podcast and Pods in the Kia Springfield crossover. God, those guys have long podcast names.
Yeah.
Monsters. Absolute monsters. That was also a free-for-all, but helped by everybody being in the same room.
Yeah. But no, this is working pretty cool. We're joined live via satellite and computers and microchips.
Technology.
Techno mumbo jumbo.
And magic.
Yeah.
I'm using magic. I'm sat inside of a stone circle. I don't know how it works, but Virgin is charging me 40 quid a month for it, so...
Damn you, Branson! And, if it wasn't enough that you subject yourself to bad movies, now here you are on my podcast where I subject you to bad Simpsons.
We're lured in with a promise of good Simpsons. And little did we know that we had to start with the bad Simpsons.
Yeah.
Damn you.
You've got to get people into the van somehow.
Yep, where we just watched an episode from the HD era. This was Season 23, Episode 13, The Daughter Also Rises. First released in February of 2012, it was directed by Chuck Sheets, he sure does, written by Rob Lezebnik. In this episode, Lisa falls for a Ernest Hemingway type boy, and Marge disapproves for no particular reason. And in the B story, Bart and Milhouse attempt to be Adam and Jamie from Mythcrackers, not Mythbusters, Mythcrackers. Hey guys, what did we think?
Discovery aren't going to allow that.
Oh, you remember Mythbusters Kids?
Yeah, even in 2012, that was over the hedge.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I feel so bad about the timing of all this. Like, I stopped giving a shit about The Simpsons in about 2000, to be honest. This then came out 13 years after that or so. And then it's been 7 years since then, and it's still running. It's just...
Yep.
It's like Interstellar. I'm just watching my kids get older instantly.
Yeah, this is technically still not new Simpsons.
No, it's 7 years old.
Yeah, this is 7 years old. Other shows have risen and fallen in that timeline.
God.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, I forgot to ask you guys at the top of the show, what is your history with The Simpsons? Where did it begin? Where did it fall off?
Paul, we'll start with you.
My family, it was part of our lives. We based our dinner time around it. Sky One in the UK used to show an episode of The Simpsons at 7 o'clock, and that was our dinner time. We all used to get together and watch it. And that's been the ritual for as long as I remember, mid-90s. And then we started to lose interest both in the show and in each other in around the early noughties. And finally, when my sister went off to college somewhere around season 14, we used that as an excuse to just not bother with The Simpsons anymore.
Oh, phew.
So I'm watching Bond films instead, really. But my feelings are Golden Age is seasons 3 through 7. 8 is pretty good. 1 and 2 are enjoyable. And then I don't really care.
I'm more of a seasons 3 to 10 kind of guy. Like 1 and 2 are good, had a lot of heart.
Yeah, a lot of
2
heart.
especially. 2 trumps 1, and 3 to 10 my favourite. But yeah, same here. After school, it was on at 6 o'clock in the evening on BBC Two.
On
I think.
BBC Two,
You had Ren and Stimpy, The Simpsons. I think just before that you had Rocko's Modern Life and Captain Scarlet. So it was a real gauntlet of fun.
I don't remember any of this.
And and that was just it every day, 5 days a week after school, The Simpsons and Ren and Stimpy. And then when the golden age of television came along, when everybody started getting Sky TV in their homes, and Simpsons was just on as often as Friends was on. So you never escape The Simpsons. It was always on. And then eventually, when I got a bit older, I realised, oh God, these are in seasons. They're not just episodes made at random and sent to Sky. By that time, I'd seen each season about 5 times each, the number of times that it had been on. And yeah, it's kind of like musical tastes and things like that. The older I got, the less I cared about finding new stuff until I realised that I wasn't watching it anymore. And then I went back and watched a couple and went, oh, it's just bad Family Guy. And Family Guy is also bad now. So
yeah, I think every so often someone will tell me, no, I know you suffered through the teens and you've been put off, but, 20s, they're actually all right. And it's like, is it the best show ever made? Because 1 through 10, that's really eligible for being one of the best shows ever made. It regularly ranks. When people care to rate such things, it ranks up there with things like The Wire and Breaking Bad as one of the best television shows ever. And if it's not that, then I'd rather not watch a pale imitation of it.
Yeah. Because you can go back to seasons 1 to 10, and there are jokes now that I will get as a man, as a quote unquote man, that I didn't get for the first 10 years of watching it. And suddenly I'll go back and there's a very, very obscure Kurosawa reference or something. And you go, oh, wow, that's wonderful. Or what a crazy sight gag that no one would ever get. The first thing that I got and watching this episode was, where's that depth? If I dived into that pool, I'd be dead right now.
Yeah.
I think we've just about answered your first question.
Well, yeah, it's these sort of things that, the episodes were good regardless of those obscure references, they were just...
You enjoy them anyway.
Yeah, they were just there if you knew them. And
that was just there as a bonus.
Yeah.
Whereas, this one, it sort of just crams in stuff with no real rhyme or reason. So, let's hook into it. Starting with you, BT. For better or worse, what's a moment from this episode that stands out to you?
I'm going to go on a bit of a long one, but we'll get there. Just because structurally, this one is just such a goddamn mess and it makes me so angry. Just nothing fits together. Specifically, okay, so Marge has this whole thing about, oh, homie, you can have Valentine's Day off. You can have a day by yourself. And then she just takes out Lisa to lunch, but then it's like, but why? And surely this would be, seeing as we just had a scene where Bart gets all these Valentine's Day cards and Lisa gets none, surely that should be the reason Marge is taking the time for Lisa, that she's lonely on Valentine's Day, and so Marge is taking her out. And then that would be the conflict when Lisa starts moving away from Marge. But that just doesn't happen. And it's very frustrating. It annoys me.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, the strands that go nowhere.
Well, it's so simple to put that together.
So a Simpsons episode back in the day would... it's loads of coincidences that would then lead into the main story. And it was very, very seamless how it was done. And that as a instigating incident is just total garbage.
Yeah, it's a spark that lights no fire at all. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's so simple as well. You have a scene where Lisa doesn't get any Valentine's Day cards, Bart gets a bunch. So then Marge is like, oh, Homer, I'm going to take Lisa out. Why don't you just have a fun day with Bart? And that would be fine. That would launch it. But they just didn't take that half a second it would take to think of such a simple idea. And I'm angry. Elliot, back to you.
So, Paul Salt, how about you? What's a moment from this episode, for better or worse, that stands out to you?
Oh, God. I am tempted to point at something that irritated me because, for example, during one of the transition scenes, I just played this to Goodman. There's this weird piano music that just feels so out of place, and it just feels endemic of the attitude of just anything can go these days, anything at all. And there's one little stretch of animation as well where we first see Homer and Bart at the basketball court, and Homer's performance, his visual performance, is so at odds with the spoken delivery, and the spoken delivery is pretty poor as well. It's something like, our marriage is so great because I have no idea where she is, and he's like wiggling his hips and like turning his back to Bart and looking sneakily both ways, and it's like the animators were like, I don't know what he's saying, so we better just make sure his physical actions are as funny as they can possibly be.
Yeah.
So we'll do lots of winks and dances and such. If we throw everything in, it'll make it even funnier. There's no room for nuance.
When in doubt, have them wiggle until the audience is laughing.
Yeah.
Wiggle.
And how about you, Salt, for better or worse? What's something that stands out to you from this episode?
Well, that was Salt, but I
You got
won't.
your paws backwards.
Oh, sorry.
Even I know
So-
that.
How dare you, sir? We didn't come on here to be moderately confused by mistake.
Who am I?
Well, do you know what? Let me just throw a little positive, like a sprinkle of positive urine in this big shower of negative piss, and
What you
say
said about that dinner I cooked for you.
there was a couple of moments in fairly quick succession that made me think, oh, maybe the first my sort of immediate anger at the first 5 minutes of this episode was misplaced. It wasn't. But when they were having the conversation, Homer and Marge, about how to spend Valentine's Day, and Homer kind of throws away his flowers and his chocolate when she says, I think we should spend it separately. After she says, I just think we should show our love for each other every day. He then very quickly scrabbles to get the flowers and chocolate back with a bit of a frightened look on his face. And maybe it was because there was no delivery there. That was quite, I quite enjoyed that moment. But then when it goes where they're batting balls and that guy drives by in the car and he just yells abuse at him because he has to spend time with his girlfriend. There's a sort of argument between the two of them. There's a pan out and this guy's in the car with his girlfriend. And his reaction of like, oh, that's it. He screams, I hate you. He goes, oh, I mean, my darling, I was looking at myself in the rearview mirror. And there's just something about the delivery of that.
Yeah.
It felt like old Simpsons.
Not to me. It felt super awkward.
Really?
Both of the moments you described. The moment where he picks the flowers up, there's such a sort of dead stop. Something about the layout of shots and the voice delivery just felt incredibly ill-paced.
I think the bits around those moments were definitely. I think those very isolated moments definitely had flashes of old Simpsons.
Yeah, and even like in Bart and Homer's like little montage in the arcade, there are a couple of like, I feel jokes that would have been in classic Simpsons, like when he's on the motorbike game and he picks up the gun from the other game and manages to use it, which I hope works in real life.
Yeah, it does not, but you just keep on believing, buddy.
And you also got Ants versus Zombies as a sight gag in that scene as well, which I thought was quite good.
Again, sight gags are pretty solid in this one. There's Heinrich's monocle shop in the background of the
I had a
batting
couple
cages.
of gags I thought I enjoyed. One of them was just the simple pun, roses are red, violence is due, which that was quite cool. That was the name of the Itchy and Scratchy episode.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, the Itchy and Scratchy. Yeah,
Yeah.
what did we think of this?
Yeah, just standard Itchy and Scratchy for me.
Itchy and-
I'm just fine with it.
Itchy and Scratchy was never my favourite part of The Simpsons. I can't remember one that made me really laugh.
Oh.
So, yeah, it's just more of that, really. It wasn't very creative, I thought.
Yeah, it sort of, to me, it actually felt like a rehash of old Itchy and Scratchy. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It did remind me of one particular episode of it.
There's one where he has to eat his own stomach. That was vaguely, like with the chef under the table. That was vaguely reminiscent.
Yeah.
My other weird gag, that I like it because it was so odd, is the Sherry and Terry twin thing.
Oh, I
Remember,
hated
the one
that.
that you pick might not be the one that you get.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I hated that one too.
loathed that moment. I that's the only bit of my notes written in caps.
Interesting. I think you and I have very different tastes when it comes to The Simpsons.
Clearly.
It's just like, where is this going? What's this got to do with the rest of the episode? This isn't Simpsons.
Nothing had anything. What episode?
Yeah.
Well, no, I agree with you, but doesn't excuse that.
There's no skeleton to tie this to. I just found it a funny little weird, creepy moment, and I like the fact that it was vaguely frightening.
Oh, good. This podcast
I
over.
think I just hated that Marge pointed it out,
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was paid attention to.
Yeah.
It was what do you call it, lampshaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
Quick with the lampshades in this episode.
And yeah, I'm going to say the moment of the story that stood out to me was, Bart and Milhouse's whole side plot with the myth crackers, the parallel import of Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they stuck the landing with this one at all.
No.
Like, And there was like a half-baked attempt to bring the plot together at the end, but...
And I like the idea. I like the idea that they've taken all those weird myths you always heard around school away, and so now it's just school and it's boring. I like that conflict, but then it just, it does not land what it had.
Yeah, and it was trying to set it up at the end by Bart and Milhouse sort of seeing that Willie on his own thinks he's a dog. And so they're like, oh, there's a myth we can build out of that. And then Willie's in on it. I think there's a disconnect with those two ideas.
Yeah. I think, like, for me, that whole bit, the way, like, Milhouse's role in that just reminded me of Meg in Family Guy season 4 onwards.
Yeah, he's doing all the dangerous things.
Remember how Milhouse gets bullied and everyone thinks that he's a loser? That's this. And it's been done so creatively in other episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I don't know, just making it part of the plot whilst also trying to be relevant with this outdated Mythcrackers bit that feels like the worst of SNL kind of caliber.
Yeah.
It was, and it does feel like something that came about simply because they had access to Adam and Jamie. I will say, I used to love Mythbusters. I'm a big fan of that show.
It's a cool show.
And I take issue with the conclusion of the show, which is that Mythbusters, what it does is sort of spoil the fun of life by over-explaining things. I don't think that was the case. I would often end an episode of Mythbusters just thinking, wow, science is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the myth wasn't true, but the things that we can do are just fucking incredible. And that's better than a sort of dumb mystery.
All with just some ballistic gel and a cannon.
Yeah. And yeah, it is a shame like that. And they had the pull to get, Adam and Jamie, who were starring as themselves in this episode, but it's kind of weird when you have the guest star in, but they're doing...
A palpod.
Yeah, the parallel import gag of not saying Mythbusters. Like,
I always preferred it when The Simpsons got people in to play characters. You know, Michael Cera not included.
Well, I was going to say,
but the best.
This episode is self-defeating.
But there was
any criticism against
a series of seasons there where they just have people come in and play themselves, and it would just be, hey, look, we got Steve Buscemi to be in our map montage.
Dreadful. And you'd always have some character sort of just say, oh my God, it's Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
You know, just in case anybody didn't get it. And it's just, those are the teens Simpsons. We'll be coming to that next, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And the one I've got lined up for you. Hey everybody, it's Tony Blair.
Oh, God. J.K. Rowling. Oh, kill every part
What's
of
wrong
me.
with you, man?
So glad I live in Australia now. It hurts less.
Salt the earth. You got a good episode.
So, play count. Have you guys seen this episode before today?
Yes, I have.
Nope.
I stopped at season 20.
Yep. And BT, why have we seen this episode before?
Because we
today?
reviewed it before, you monster.
Why?
Yeah, back in the early days of the podcast, we did just a couple of duo episodes with me and BT, but I was like, I don't like the way that looks on the spreadsheet. Must be a minimum of 3 guests. So I abandoned that record and I made you watch
More
it again.
people must suffer.
How are your feelings on me now, BT?
I mean, I'm a robot, so I don't have feelings. But my circuit still
It helps
likes it, buddy, don't
in
worry.
these situations.
Why did they program me to feel pain?
Wackiness. Was this a particularly wacky episode of The Simpsons?
Pretty wacky.
You could say it's wacky. It doesn't mean it's good.
No, there's definitely good whack and bad whack.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. This was bad wacky in as much as it was just weird shit happens for no apparent reason.
I feel like it was pitched like that. This is a wacky one.
Yeah.
And everyone went, great, can't wait.
Pretty sure that's how they pitched seasons 8 onwards. Pretty sure that's how, what's his name? Mike Scully started pitching episodes.
Yeah.
Each one wackier than the last.
Poor Mike Scully, I shouldn't keep demonizing him.
Not again.
Just hate him so much.
But one of the wacky moments, which I kind of liked and nothing, where Lisa was like, oh, it's just like Paris if I block my peripherals, and...
Oh,
Went too long.
I felt there was promise there. There was a good setup for a joke there. I just found it a bit blunt, the awful things that were happening. I think that you could play that just a bit more subtly depressing. Like for some reason, I just thought of the moment from the very pilot episode of Father Ted. I don't know if you guys have watched any Father Ted, but there's a moment where they need to sell how grim this island is. And so Father Ted on the phone to a pair of visitors just says, is there a man staring at you wearing a t-shirt that says, I shot JR? And it's just a really disheveled, awful-looking man sat on a wall nearby staring at them. And I feel like that's the kind of gag that might have worked better there, just something subtly depressing or small town.
I feel like a pan out would have been a more Simpson-y reveal the tunnel vision, like the hand vision, was very, again, Family Guy. And I don't want to come across as being someone who's got it in for Family Guy, but I do think that it was shit after season 3. So I guess
we've all got it in for Family Guy just a little bit. I kind of want to study this academically because I like how the world very much turned on that show.
It is interesting, isn't it? I remember in 2001, when I think it was 1999 actually, when that show launched, I remember thinking, oh God, I don't need The Simpsons anymore.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah.
And I do, really stand by those first 3 seasons, although it's a little hard to judge because I watched them so fucking much.
I think if we went back, we could definitely chart it. I think there's a real difference in how the first 3 seasons are plotted. And am I right in thinking there's a gap between seasons 3 and 4 as well?
Yeah, it got cancelled.
Okay, which does seem to be the death knell of a lot of shows, because then it comes back and it feels like they're no longer in the flow. Season 4, as soon as they come back, all they're doing is they're just drawing attention to the classic Family Guy gags and just playing on the tropes that they created in the first 3 seasons. So it becomes really self-referential. Every gag is incidental.
Yeah.
There's so little that actually refers to the plot, which again is my issue with a lot of later Simpsons. It becomes just about how wacky he is, how stupid Homer is. Oh, he's like Peter Griffin now. Oh, brilliant.
Well, look, Mike Scully did say when he took over the series in season 9, I know, fuck Mike Scully. He said that the idea was to shift attention and make it much more gag-heavy than story-based.
Now,
and I think that was really what turned the tide.
I think that was a terrible move as well, because my prevailing theory on Family Guy is because it's so rarely driven by heart or emotion or this core family demographic that none of the jokes feel tied to anything, any storyline or any emotion or anything like that. So if your favorite joke from Family Guy, you probably don't know what episode it belongs to because it's so disconnected from the plot.
That's definitely the case, and I remember that. I mean, again, in the early episodes, though, like one of my favorite gags is Peter Griffin poking the crocodile, and then the koala flies in his face.
Yeah.
And what episode is that? Well, why was Peter traveling? Because his wife got a job as an air stewardess. That's it. So I can figure it out. But you're right. Nowadays, there's no chance.
Yeah, and like you were saying, Goodman, the heavy reliance on relying on the tropes that they set up in The Simpsons it's still prevalent in this episode. They, have a cut to Cletus and he makes an incest gag. I don't approve of outbreeding. Fucking hell.
I was amazed there were no new characters. I mean, I stopped watching this 3 years prior to this, and I imagine if I picked up an episode from series 30, I think they're on, that it would still be the same characters acting in the same, albeit flanderized way.
Yeah.
It's just astonishing to me that they're up to, 700 some episodes without changing anything. I mean, the stagnation is powerful, it's radioactive.
Oh, it's stank, all right.
Yeah, and the only new characters are the ones that they bring in for guest stars, like the guest star of this episode, Michael Cera, playing Nick. What did we think of that performance?
Man, total waste of a guest star, and just his character is this is the other big problem I have with this episode, is that in the end, it's meant to be established that he's some kind of big liar who's been lying to Lisa about all the great things he's done. We've not seen any of that at all. It's not even been mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was
so confused.
There's a bit where they're rowing across the river, and she's like, "Oh, I thought you rowed up the Ganges unassisted." He's like, It's like, we never heard that. This is the first time we're hearing this as a lie.
I wondered if I'd missed that. Oh, fuck me. I'm angrier.
No, it just wasn't included.
No, it really, really pissed me off.
What was he, a Hemingway, apparently?
Yeah.
Wasn't Hemingway like an alcoholic and a real...
He's more of a Fitzgerald.
But no, he was a Hemingway because they told you he was. He's Hemingway-esque.
They named the episode for it.
The daughter also rises.
Oh, what's that a reference to?
The son also rises.
Well, no, you're right. It was a complete waste of a character, and there was no relationship between him and Lisa. There wasn't one nice moment. When I think back to my favourite Simpsons episodes, you can think of moments that almost make me cry because they're so sweet. And even when you have Lisa's romance with Nelson, there's so much heart in that. There's so much in there. And like for these two unlikely people to cross. And in this, the Simpsons movie already did it. They had that Irish kid who was a very sensitive, artistic kind of boy. So there's already had a character like that who was not very well, but better written. And so you're already treading familiar ground, but then they're not putting anything in there to distinguish their particular relationship. And if the whole episode hinges on that, and Marge's reaction hinges on that, and the resolution hinges on that, what have you got? You've got a broken seesaw.
Yeah. Yeah, and Marge's reaction to it is so out of nowhere. She's swooned by this kid. You know, he does the whine and the kiss on the hand.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she's like, I don't want you spending much time with this boy. What the where did that come from?
Yep.
It's
incidental.
so boring and familiar. I'm sure that in the late teens I saw an exact same storyline but with Bart and Marge.
Yeah.
Like, he starts spending time with her, they get really close, but then suddenly the same thing, and it's just so dull.
Yeah.
Because the central conflict in this makes no sense. And the central romance makes no sense. God damn it. I'm just angry.
Yeah.
Like, especially at the end where Lisa imagines Hemingway's first two wives, and they both say, like, oh, tortured writers make terrible husbands. Like, that's not what this kid is. He just reads Hemingway. Like,
Yeah.
that's not...
Yeah, exactly. And what's the takeaway there? The idea of, oh, don't go with anyone who's unhappy.
Yeah.
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 Pick your partners based on cheerfulness.
For this relationship to end, if it's going to mean a fucking thing, Lisa would at least need to be sad about it ending. And this ending reminded me again so much of Family Guy. I remember watching again, I can't remember the episode, surprisingly, but it's the one with Marilyn Manson in it. And it ends with him delivering a really sort of wholesome Christian message as resolution. And I think that was actually a parody of a lot of their other sitcoms and things like that. But Family Guy did it all the time because the jokes were incidental. Peter would just learn a lesson at the end and go, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this. And everybody goes, that's all right. It's a good thing we didn't have any character moments. And it was the exact same thing here. If Lisa actually gave a shit about this person, she'd have struggled to let him go. She'd have actually been like, well, I didn't want to let him go, but there he goes. But she just turns around and goes, no, I was wrong. And Marge goes, no, I was wrong. And that's it. What is the fucking point of watching an episode where nobody learns anything or nothing happens to anybody? What a waste of money.
It just feels so hollow.
Yeah.
It's strange that it's still only 20 minutes long. The Simpsons has only ever been 22 minutes long or so.
Longer.
And yet, look at relationships like Lisa and her substitute teacher, for example.
Oh,
or
so
Lisa and Ralph. That just
Yeah.
have real connections in that same amount of time. So there's no excuse for it to feel as rushed as it is.
And it felt longer.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was like still a nice moment with, you know, person you kiss, a mulberry tree, someone you love, and then
Yeah, I like that.
Marge gives her a peck on the head. You know, that was a nice moment, but it really didn't mean
But
anything.
even
I like
that
that.
mulberry tree
Yeah.
on the
Yeah,
island, where
agreed.
did that even come from? It was just, okay, now we're going to this tree. It's like, it's a thing they're suddenly doing, and we have no context as to the importance of it until it's point blank explained to you. This is the importance. This is why we're doing it now. We're here.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much shit there is in this episode. Like, if you lay it out, Grandpa tells a story and gets involved, and the whole myth crackers thing, and Willie, and Homer, and Bart, and it's Jesus.
Yep.
No wonder everything feels so rushed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for real.
Because they couldn't think of enough ways to spread out. I always felt this about teenage Simpsons, is that if you can't come up with a story and develop it properly, just put a loads of little ones in.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we've actually, pretty well gone over the heart as well. So, ultimately, though, guys, did this feel like an episode of The Simpsons? How was character integrity?
Character integrity? I mean, I assume you've discussed the phenomenon of Flanderization before, the fact that all of these characters have now been reduced to single traits.
Yeah.
Marge worries, Homer's an idiot. I'll tell you one thing about consistency. A lot of the voices are sounding really strained. I don't know if it's good for Julie Kavanaugh to keep doing Marge. She sounds like it's not comfortable.
It's hard on the throat.
Yep.
I just think they're neat.
It's it's hard. I only do it once a day, and that's just to not to lose
Isn't
it.
she in her 60s now?
Yeah, one of the things we keep saying is, she's done more growling than most death metal vocalists, you know?
She's just standing at the side of Job for a Cowboy, just shaking her head. Like, you call them pig squeals, mate?
She's 68.
Golly.
Let her retire.
Oh, fuck, really? I didn't know that. Jeez.
They've been talking like this for 30 years.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus, no, I can take it.
But, if you think she sounds a bit haggard here, if you ever feel the need to check out any post-season 28 episodes, it's
my
seriously
God, no.
sad.
Like, yeah.
That's got to be like abuse.
Oh, for real. Must be worth the paycheck.
Elder abuse at this stage.
Yeah.
But as far as character integrity, I didn't actually think there were any character breaks. It was just sort of poor motivation.
Yeah, exactly what I was going to say. Just they're acting like themselves, but they weren't prompted to do so this way. But the characters are still technically fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I think
guess
that's fair
they do
enough.
the things that they would always do. There's nothing behind any of it. All utterly contrived.
Yeah, and as for the show feeling like itself as well, I think, we were saying it before, it's just there's so many elements and so many moving parts to this thing, yet they're not cohesive, so yeah, it doesn't really feel like Simpsons.
I'm thinking back to something like 22 Short Stories About Springfield,
Yeah.
which is an episode entirely disjointed, and yet still feels like a sort of coherent thing, because it has that feeling to it. Here, it's like, it would be as if those 22 short stories were all actually telling one story, but the scenes all felt like 22 separate stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, for real. So yeah, don't see yourself watching this one again?
Oh, God, no.
Oh, God.
I started to watch it again before you guys were slightly delayed, so I thought, okay, let's make it fresh in my mind. I haven't seen it in about 12 hours. Let's give it another go. And I found new irritating things in just the 5 minutes that I watched.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy. I will say, to go back to a couple of points that we understandably gloss over, the wackiness, I did enjoy one. There was a really good escalation at the beginning where
Oh yeah.
most of the joke wasn't very good, but the punchline was good, where they go to watch Itchy and Scratchy on various devices. And they go from a TV to a laptop to a phone, and then the next thing is just watching it on a petrol pump.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I thought that was good. It wasn't very Simpsons, but it was wackiness that worked in that joke.
Yeah.
I would also say that, just to pick up on the Pyramus and Thisbe thing, what the fuck was that Disney joke?
Yeah. 'Cause
That was...
it's also...
It's not a joke, it was just a line.
Yeah. But Lisa is commenting on a book that she is imagining. Like, it's in her thought bubble, so it doesn't necessarily exist. And so she's giving Disney shit for adding a talking parrot in a thing she's imagining.
Yeah.
What kind of a joke about Disney is that? It's like, it put a talking parrot in it, and suddenly they think that's good. Yeah, great. What a hot take.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a joke that would be made about 90s era Disney. It feels like a joke about Pocahontas or The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I mean, when was the last time that they just put... I'm trying to think if recent Disney people have had animal sidekicks.
I mean, they a lot of them do, but they don't talk, I don't think. Like in Tangles.
You're right, they've stopped talking.
Yeah.
Frozen, Moana, they don't talk anymore. Shit, I
Um,
didn't notice that. They've stopped talking.
Oh my God!
Tell the press.
It's all over, man!
We're through
Check
the
the
looking
files.
glass here, people.
Except Zootropolis, of course.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're into the what would you change about this episode. We'll start with you, BT. What would you change?
I mean, I feel like I've already covered this. Just make any of it fit together and remember what you're doing and what your characters are doing. And yeah, there's a whole other reason Marge could get angry at Lisa for hanging out with his boy too much. There's a whole other reason Lisa could be swooned by him, but under the impression that he's this worldly person when he's actually just lying all the time. Maybe he just watches a lot of documentaries and that's how he knows about the world. I don't know, something. Bring everything in your conclusion to head way earlier so we know what's going on, so conclusion has meaning. I'm out.
And Paul Goodman, what would you like to change?
Well, yeah, it's all been covered. We just need explanations and motivations for things. I will just say that going back to what your arch nemesis Mike Scully said about making it gag heavy, Simpsons has always been gag heavy. It's been just packed to the fucking rafters with jokes. It didn't need more jokes. And that is exactly the problem with this episode. It needs to be more character-based and more story-based. Why? Otherwise, you can just go and watch Family Guy. So that's it. You just have to make it way more based on the characters and the things that they want.
And you, Salt?
I'd have cancelled the series 13 years earlier. I mean, really, I just feel
that's
like
good.
there are people alive now, grown-ass people in their 20s who were not alive when Simpsons was good.
Yeah, we
And
pity
that is
them.
so depressing to me. I really struggle to think of how to save an individual episode of this because none of it justifies the sheer greed, the senseless, cynical corporate bullshit that has kept this on air for, 22 years past its sell-by date. That's obscene.
Yeah.
It's things like that makes me think maybe the West should fall.
Look what we did to the
This is the last
Simpsons.
days of Rome.
We've got James Acaster. It's all going to be okay.
And yeah, as for what I'd change, look, just because we're going over the Lisa storyline, obviously, because it's the main one, like, I think there might actually be legs to the Bart Milhouse story, and them sort of cracking myths and stuff and getting into that. I kind of wished it was a Milhouse gets injured story as well.
Yeah, some kind of consequence to all the risk he's being put into, yeah.
Yeah, and if Lisa had some sort of involvement and it's like, hey, there's not scientific merit behind what you're doing, you're just blowing shit up.
That's true. Oh my god, that would be a great commentary on Mythbusters. That's a great idea.
Yeah, because I think that is one of the criticisms that gets lobbed at it from the science community, that it's, soft sciences.
Oh, yeah.
Which,
oh, god, yeah. I mean, no repeatable results. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely an entertainment show first and a science show second, but that could have pissed off the guest stars.
Yeah, exactly. But
and the network that didn't care enough to let them use their actual fucking title.
Yeah, like Discovery Channel is going to get their fucking lawyers onto Fox, like, seriously. But yeah, and I think, not that there's anything wrong with Mythbusters as a show, soft science is accessible, and but sure. I think, there was a commentary to be made on that they bailed on.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we're here. BT, do you have any other notes?
Yep, I'll just go through them real quick. That meat cute sucked.
Oh, the fucking Luigi, that's a spicy meat cute.
Not even that. It's like, they see each other through a crack in the thing, and he's all like, oh, well, what light came through this crack? And she's like, you've got quite a way with words. Like, no, he doesn't. Yeah. That was bad.
Yeah, that was bad. That was a clumsy come-on, guy. Yep. Like, if you tried to speak to someone that way, it'd be like, oh, that's kind of creepy. I don't really know you.
Yep. Yeah, a big note I have is just everything just takes too goddamn long. Like when Marge puts on the water shoes and she kind of runs out for a little bit and then turns around and comes back and then starts going. I was like, you assume something is chasing her, that's why she comes back. But nope, just to stick on this bit for a little bit longer. And like every bit has, even if you kind of enjoyed it, it just lasted too long.
And Homer, made a comment, women and their shoes, am I right? And he's like, what?
Yeah.
What about women and their shoes? What are you saying?
Their shoes can walk
Bart
on
should have
water.
just fucking slapped him.
Yeah. That would have been great.
You changed, Dad.
But in the spirit of things, I'm going to bring up one good thing, which is Grandpa's diary, which just has, he's like, oh, let me see if I can fit you in. He says, wait for death, wait for death, wait for death, wait for death. So I got a good chuckle out of that, and that is all my notes. Elliot.
All right, Paul Salt, how about you? Do you have any other notes about this episode?
I think I'm out. I stand by the twin thing. I found it funny. Fuck all of you.
Who wins?
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And you, Paul Goodman?
Moe's delivery of the line, Fox ain't doing this again, at the beginning of the episode made me think, oh, maybe this is going to be like an old episode of The Simpsons.
Oh, so this is a weird thing that this has actually happened a lot, where they have in the episode animated some celebration of a milestone, and this happened in their 300th as well.
Yeah, I thought it rang a bell.
And they like, yay, 500th episode, but it wasn't actually in the 500th, and they pointed that out. And then they were like, oh, well, we're not going to do this again. And it's like, well, why didn't you put it in the right episode?
Yeah, it's confusing. Like, is there a half episode? Is the first episode sometimes not included as episode 1, but a pilot? Like, it's very odd.
No, it's very confusing, like, why they bother to still include it, like, and not just put it in the right episode. Like, I don't know much about animation, but cut and paste, am I right?
Hey, also, there was a breakup joke with a child Spanish guitarist. And these two small girls, I did not get that or what that was referring to. I can only imagine it was great.
No, I think it was just a standalone sort of, imagine if this kid was like an oversexed kind of Lothario type.
But yeah, we're talking about Family Guy-esque. It just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And went nowhere. All right, well, it's time for my final notes. When Bart and Milhouse are watching TV, Kirk is just kind of there. Like, and it wasn't a good joke. It wasn't really worth it. And it's like, well, why weren't they just at Milhouse's house or Kirk's place? I don't know.
Fuck me, that's a good point. And another note on that, I found it super awkward the way Kirk says something about his dream, and then we actually have a reaction shot of Bart going, and then he turns the TV on.
Yeah.
That was so odd. And just to me, again, spoke to this weird disconnect, this disassociation between the voice performance, the writing, the voice performance, and the animation.
No,
just feel
absolutely.
like they're being done on different planets.
And another moment where the characters are looking bored on screen, so, how are us as the audience meant to feel?
Equally bored.
Also hated the reoccurring joke of Nelson with the candy cigarettes.
Again, it took too long.
On the nose.
Yeah.
So much shit in this episode. Fuck me, you keep peeling back layers, and it's like, oh my god.
It's an onion made of shit.
There's no more layers, it's just muscle now. Blood and muscle. Stop. He's already dead.
There was a weird, I don't remember what they were saying in the mirror, but they were doing like a Bloody Mary thing, you know, say name in the mirror 3 times.
Yeah.
Now, the weird thing with this joke is that, Lunch Lady Doris appears. Now, the original voice actor for Lunch Lady Doris actually passed away, and they quietly retired the character in the teens era, but for no particular reason, they brought her back in like season 20 or something. And so this joke especially just sort of feels really like gross to me. Like,
yeah, to be a haunting that actually has basically a zombie character.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is weird. It's like, oh, Miss Crabapple is, too important to keep her going as a zombie character, but Lunch Lady Doris, we'll do that, it's fine.
They've crabappled a couple of times.
Really? Oh, I didn't realise that's so awful of them.
Yep. They're usually nice-ish reprisals, but it's still just don't do it at all. Let the character be gone.
Toy Story 4 zombies, what's his name? Don Rickles a little. Mr. Potato Head's dead. And he's in Toy Story 4 and has a couple lines, but it's pretty subdued. I think that was fairly tasteful.
And time for my final note, and yeah, in the spirit of one good thing, I actually really liked the color palette of that final scene. I thought, the way the sun set against the blues and greens of the waters, that was just a really nice color palette. Shame about the content.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is time to rank this thing. On the Simpsons Index, we rank using our 6-point scale, which starts down the bottom at failure. Maybe if the episode is just meh, you give it a participant. But for the positive rankings, you got okay bronze, good silver, excellent gold, but for the best of the very best, you give cubic zirconia. I'm going to go first. Let me show you how it's done. I'm going to give it a participant. I could have failed this one, but, for the couple of okayish jokes, and it was just more of a nothing episode, I got to say. BT.
I'm very tempted to kick it into the pit of failure, but I just don't have the enthusiasm to do that. It's just sit on the edge and wallow in your own filth, participant.
All right, Paul Salt.
It failed for me. I mean, I don't have as much of a frame of reference as you guys do, because again, I watched most of season 20 about a decade ago, and I haven't watched any new Simpsons since, and I still go back to the Golden Age periodically, so I'm still in that heady space of just the best Simpsons. So consequently, this feels like such a fucking step down. I've got no choice but to fail it.
Yeah.
All right, and Paul Goodman, finish it off.
Yeah, I'm going to stretch my legs and be negative for a change. Being positive just takes it out of you,
Yeah.
It's a failure. I couldn't pass this. I couldn't hold this up to somebody and say, this got through. Under my watch.
All right, well, 2 participants, 2 failures. That'll be a dull participant, because we average up on the index for the split rankings.
You're a nice person.
But yeah, a dull participant versus a shiny failure, it's moldy apples and disgusting oranges. Yeah, so this will be joining other such episodes as Replaceable You, which we actually reviewed with Shut Up and Take My Podcast, Bart's New Friend, which was written by Judd Apatow, and
Whoa.
what was that? I always forget this one.
Homer reverts to a childhood 10-year-old phase, becomes Bart's friend, and there's no conflict.
That's right.
Oh.
Wow, okay.
Also in the dull participant range is Waiting for Duffman, where Homer becomes the new Duffman.
Oh, that rings a bell.
Wow.
And Moho House, which we reviewed recently, and Beware My Cheating Bart, where Bart briefly dates Shauna. Oh, there's a new character.
Shauna.
Yeah, she's the daughter of Superintendent Chalmers, and she's... Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And her catchphrase is, I'm Shauna.
Yeah, great character.
That rings a bell, too.
Great.
God almighty. These are so memorable, these episodes of The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Yeah, that about does it for the HD era. Now we're going to go to the teens era, where we are going to review the time where the Simpsons go to England. We're going to be reviewing the Regina Monologues. We'll be back. And we are back, and we just watched our Teens Era episode. This was Season 15, Episode 4, The Regina Monologues. First released in November of 2003, it was directed by Mark Kirtland, written by John Swartzwelder.
I didn't want to participate on that one.
Really?
This was the last John Swartzwelder credited episode as well.
Right. Before he properly disappeared.
Yeah. In this episode, the Simpsons go to England. Hey, y'all, what did we think?
Brolly!
Oh, good golly. Gosh. Fish and chips. What? Yeah, it was great send up. Take that, Australia.
Man.
BT, a
Just-
tuppence for your thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way. You said the Simpsons go to England. You just summarized 23 minutes of plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's it. That's the only thing that happens.
Yeah, it's really an episode with no spinal structure. There's no
Yeah.
through line. I thought maybe at the beginning they make a big deal of the fact that Bart is doing this to please Marge. Bart, I don't think, has any input to the plot after that again.
Nope.
And
Except for being sassy.
apart from being sassy a few times. And yeah, it becomes entirely not about pleasing Marge beyond even the most perfunctory way. It's just a pile of what gags can we think of for England. And most of the
Yeah.
gags are, what if England worked the same way as the United States, but slightly more Englishy? Wouldn't that be funny? Like, what if there was a flickering light outside of the Marriott that says keys cut here? Not Marriott. Where is it? The shopping place? That's here?
Harrods?
Harrods. That's
Yeah.
the one. Oh, yeah, thanks, guys.
Your English correspondents, the two Australian guys.
Well, we don't know. We have to blot it out, otherwise we shrivel up and implode. The main jokes in this were, here's an actor playing himself. Here's a rabbit playing herself. Do you remember in the past when The Simpsons used to have actors come in and play roles? Just play
Yeah,
characters in The Simpsons. And then there was a watershed moment where suddenly they'd just go, hi, I'm Steve Buscemi. And that was it.
Yeah, and that would be the joke. That would be the entire joke. Like, ha! Oh, amazing.
But that happens like straight out of the barrel on this one. They go to England, it's like, look, it's Prime Minister Tony Blair.
Oh, I hated it. Because they don't even attempt to rationalize it a little bit within the
No.
context of the episode.
No.
There's no logic to it.
And yeah, speaking of, one of the guest stars for the episode, former Prime Minister Tony Blair, who only agreed to do this guest spot if he could promote tourism to Britain.
Fucking
Mission
hell.
accomplished. Let's go.
It's like when at school the teacher goes, oh, we're going to watch a film today. Yay. But we're going to have to think about some themes. Oh.
Oh. No, when they stop it every 5 minutes to talk about those themes, and you're like, I'm trying to watch Braveheart, bitch.
Yeah. It's freedom. It's,
like-
just about freedom.
You know, something that depressed me is it occurred to me that there is no living Prime Minister I would have rather heard than Tony Blair.
Oh, Jeremy
He's
Corbyn.
still- He's still the lesser of all the evils.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And he's the only leader of a country to ever do a guest spot on The Simpsons.
well, there his legacy be.
Again, we are always going to be comparing this to the Australia episode, or I'm going to
Yeah.
be, because it's one of my favourite episodes of all time.
Yeah, it's the best.
And
Yeah.
their politician joke is, I'm going to take something to the Prime Minister, Andy! And naked,
Mate,
lads.
what's a good word?
naked on a tube on a lake drinking a beer. And in this, it's
Yeah, that's the
actual
best.
Prime Minister Tony Blair going, hello, come to England. How fucking lazy.
Not only that, Bart versus Australia, it's all plot. Like, if you watch the episode, there's no
Yeah.
indication whatsoever what city they're even in. Because they're
Yeah.
not like,
Yes.
let's go see Centrepoint Tower, let's go see Uluru.
Yeah.
They're just, it's all about the plot. Whereas in this,
Yeah.
it's just again and again, here's this thing you've heard of.
Yeah, roundabouts. Whoa.
And really skin deep as well. Just if I were making sort of satire of England, but of course they're not making a satire of England.
No.
They're making a satire like they did with Australia. They weren't satirizing Australia. They were satirizing American impressions of Australia.
Yes.
You know, it was the aspects of Australian culture and symbolism that had made it over to America. They were satirizing those, and they're doing the same here with England, but just not in a satisfying way. They're just making very lazy references and just getting vague guest stars, and
It's just lazy. It's
Yeah.
so
Very
lazy.
lazy.
The Macbeth joke is probably one of my least favourite Simpsons jokes of all time. It
Wow.
is the laziest, most obvious sequence.
Starring another guest star for this episode, Sir Ian McKellen.
Oh, man.
Great, very well used.
And just some really odd shade gets thrown. Like, where it's like, oh, look, there's Jimmy Page, who stole all of the black
What the fuck
American
was that
music.
line?
And it's like, really? Really? We're the ones who stole all the black American music? We're
Yeah.
the ones who capitalized on it? Mr. Elvis Presley and every rock and roll star of the 1950s?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very odd. It's very odd that Jimmy Page should be the target of the ire there.
Is there any trivia on this on how many Family Guy writers we have on the Simpsons team at this stage? Because that's a very Family Guy line. That's a Peter Griffin line.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, what stands out to me for this episode, for a Sportsworld append episode, because, usually the writer of an episode is kind of irrelevant because they are done in these big writers team, and, the credited writer is essentially the person who's putting all these puzzle pieces together and just, making connective tissue. But whereas Swartzwelder, he famously worked alone. But this episode felt distinctly un-Swartzweldian.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. There's not a hint of his wit.
Yeah, there's none of those great misdirect jokes, and it's, just all filler, all padding. What about you? We'll start with you, Goodman. For better or worse, what stands out to you from this episode?
There are a couple of bits that stood out in a positive way. The Lord Daft Wager thing I remember loving as a teenager.
Yeah.
I used to quote the
name is
yes, and
great.
are you thing, and just the suddenness with which they kiss. It's got a real Monty Python feel to it, I think.
Yeah, and just Daft Wager as a name is pretty fun.
It's very good. Daft Wager is...
Yeah.
That's a good reveal.
And that did work still. I mean, the only other joke that really worked for me... Oh no, there was Hockey Dad, and I think the way that was the well done, you're the man or whatever when he
You're
beat
a big
by the police. Yeah, it was quite good. But surprisingly, everyone's favourite country in the world, America, I think it was just the delivery of it got a bit of a titter out of me. And then we saved our ass in Vietnam and shared our prostitutes with Hugh Grant. It was, at the very least, it was just unexpected. So it surprised me. And that was nice to be surprised more than once in this episode.
I guess that's the thing about an episode without a real anchor, is that it can be surprising at least.
Well, if it's just going to be a catalogue of jokes, then some of them are going to land, you'd hope.
Yeah, 2 of them did.
How about you, Salt? What stands out to you for better or worse?
So for better, I will say, look, it goes on too long, the joke, but I like the reveal of Judi Dench's fish and chips. It's such a dumb thing to exist, why Judi Dench? And just the fact that all of the speakers are shaped like her head. It was a good visual gag, the cut to it, but then why do we spend so long there? And then Judi Dench is actually a character and she's berating the staff, and it lost the immediacy of it because it was
Way
just
funnier to think she's just got a franchise of fish and chip shops.
She's just got a fish and chip shop. It's great, and that was part of it. The part of the whole, wouldn't it be funny if Britain was just like America, only British?
Yeah.
Bit of observational comedy. Whenever an American appears in a British play, we make a fucking big deal out of it. Doesn't matter who it is.
Oh, so that is based on a thing.
That is a thing. So when it's like Urkel in something you've never heard of, that felt fairly authentic because we do get pretty excited when we get an American in our play.
And one of the other guest stars for this episode,
Urkel?
Huh? No.
Oh.
Urkel was not playing Othello in this
Well,
episode.
fuck me running.
Othello.
No, Joe Millionaire himself was playing Joe Millionaire. What's his name again? Evan Marriott. So did you guys know this show, or?
No.
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh, okay. It was a reality show. The premise was that it's like a bachelor show, looking for love, 20 ladies, and he's sold to them that he's a millionaire, and then it turns out, nope, I'm poor when he chooses the final girl.
So it's like
And
catfishing.
the island is actually a peninsula?
And the island is actually a peninsula.
Where's that joke from? Is that a Simpsons gag?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
How about you, BT? What stands out to you for better or worse?
I'm going to point it out mostly for worse. So Bart and Lisa have some British candy which sends them on a sugar bender high running around to the soundtrack of Lust for Life. Fair enough.
Because train spotting is close enough.
Which ends in a train spotting reference, and train spotting is Scottish. So I think that does a good job of illustrating how little fucks were given on this episode.
And Lust for Life, Iggy Pop, pretty sure that's an American guy.
It's all the train spotting thing, though. It's because that song's used in the intro, so...
Oh,
it's
is that why?
But even then, it's a Scottish movie.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. One other joke I did like, sorry,
Yeah?
it's just... I quite enjoyed the exhibit on Lisa. One of the signs just said, "A Simpson too many?" ? And that amused me.
Yeah. Oh, such an odd turn for this episode to take as well, having the Bart Museum.
Yeah, again, that's why I think one of the things that really keeps it from feeling very Schwartzweldian is how long the fuck you intro is.
Yeah.
I don't want to compare it to everything great he's done, but portraying exactly what I just said, comparing it to Homer at Bat, where you hit the ground running so quickly in that.
Yeah.
And this
I
one
love
is,
that episode.
you know,
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I know.
What I used to love about The Simpsons, the intros were always bam, bam, 1, 2, and then the main plot. It would be somebody does something that triggers something else, and then that triggers the main plot.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this,
It's how you'd know which episode you were watching from seconds in.
Oh, it just flounders.
Yeah, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
I think it's the third act where they're like, and Homer runs out of a roundabout and hits the Queen, and that's our plot. It's like,
well,
no.
the first act we've
Yeah.
still got a Mo going, oh, I wish he'd crank call me. And Bart calling Mr. Burns Boney Curtis.
Yeah.
Got to fit all those great jokes in. That's why that took so long.
For real.
Christ.
Play count. How many times before today have you seen this episode, BT?
I've seen it the tuppence.
Goodman?
Yeah, about between 5 and 10. I liked it as an undiscerning teenager, and I just didn't think about it. It was just, Simpsons, cool. I'm not laughing, but that's probably my fault.
Yeah, Salt?
I'd already abandoned Simpsons for Family Guy by 2003, so I didn't see it in its initial run. I think I caught it subsequently, so I think this might be only my second time.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't honestly say I've seen it that much. I know it, like season 15, I'm pretty mixed on, but this one has always left a bad taste in my mouth, unlike
Right.
British candy. So, how about wackiness? Was this a particularly wacky episode of The Simpsons?
Part of the London Eye disengages so Homer and Marge can float about on the ocean and go find Bart and Lisa.
And just confirming that does not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Only if you know the right people.
You got to know Mr. Johnson personally. So you mean like how many times does it like portray the reality of your average episode of The Simpsons? It's a fair few. I mean, with all the Mary Poppins flying around, it's a long way from the koala climbing up the pole in order to touch the electric pylon a second time.
Yeah.
I think there's one moment in this episode, I can't remember specifically what it was, but there's a sort of imagination sequence where somebody goes, and it goes to their mind. And that triggered in me memories of earlier classic Simpsons where I thought, it's going to be a really wacky, really off-kilter like imagination. Like, do you remember, I can't remember which Simpsons episode it is, but we're in the money.
Yeah.
When they're just imagining how a plan's going to work out and then the elephant comes on and that kind of level of wackiness. But it was just so stolid.
Was
and
this when Bart was
boring.
fantasizing about what to do with the $1,000?
That's it, his space base or whatever
I
it was,
love
his
it.
bar in space.
R2D2 on the base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
R2D2 play in the bass. Loved it.
That line I
no.
quite liked. The line of R2D2 on the bass because it was very, I don't know, it felt like an improvised song someone
Yeah.
just came up with. But
It just felt so polished and overworked for me. That's just what this whole episode was. Any attempt at wackiness, like Homer punching out 3 people on the way to the next scene. Like, what? Where are the repercussions there? The wackiness works because you've got the real world repercussions of earlier Simpsons and people going, wow, Homer's crazy because look at all these straight men. But, you know, in this reality where he can just attack people on the street in London and get away with it.
Crash the Queen and then break into her bedroom and...
Yeah. And they find a special secret book. How?
like, just, you know, when Bart and again, comparing it to the Australian episode, I
Yeah.
think we'll be doing that a lot today.
Yep.
When
Yeah.
they got out of the booting, like, that had so much more emotional impact than this.
Yeah.
This just felt like
Well-
shit that happens.
Yeah.
I was going to hold on to this particular observation until the next episode because it does tie in. But the thing about The Simpsons is that it was always a parody of the American sitcoms of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what each of them had in common is they would end with some sort of moral, some sort of lesson learned, and they would move on. And the great thing about The Simpsons is that it would always end with that moral, but subverted slightly or kind of darker than you'd normally have. Like, I was watching the episode the other day where Otto loses his job and moves in with The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And there's that great bit where Bart says, Homer says to Bart, why aren't you playing a guitar? And he's like, I'm going to be honest with you, Dad. I wasn't good at it straight away, so I just gave up. And he's like, son. If something's hard, it's not worth doing. Now, you just put that guitar in a box and come and watch TV with me.
But
What
what's
do you- what's
on?
on?
It doesn't,
It doesn't matter.
And it plays
That's
that music.
great. Yeah, the music's great. That's so good.
Yeah,
And
in
the
this.
next episode we discuss has something similar, but in this there's just not even an attempt. It's like, no, we don't need to do that. We don't need to satirize the idea of having a point or make a counterpoint.
Come on, it concludes with the idea of getting rid of Madonna. If that's not moral, I don't know what. No, it's garbage.
That's the American contribution.
It did
to
bring the great line, English women don't pump gas naked, which I did like.
because they
Yeah,
do.
wasn't a fan of See You in Atlanta, bitch. That was a bit...
Yeah,
Whoa.
That's
weirdly
harsh, right?
too much.
Wow, someone's got it in for Madge all of a sudden.
I mean, to be fair. And also the other bit of whackness I wanted to bring up was the cab butler who just has a briefcase full of like ready to go tea.
Oh, yeah.
I enjoyed
yeah.
that.
It's very much in the vein of, I nicked it.
Yes.
I do it again.
You let your guard down for that split second. They do it again.
Like, what do you guys think of the general parody of English people in this? Like,
Well, you know, it's very, as you'd expect. Again, it's a parody of American concepts of British people.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, very reserved, very, you know, posh.
It's not much of it.
Yeah.
I was about
They
to
never
say-
go to the East End and meet, like, some proper British blokes.
Although they do have that one, look at his great staring eyes. Which,
Yeah.
again, I did really like that delivery.
I don't remember.
That was the one when Homer's in prison, finally.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I think
right,
he's in the
yeah.
Tower of London, because London.
Yeah.
again,
Yeah, we
just-
do that sort of
The
thing.
only prison in all of England.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they go to England, they don't meet a hooligan, a Ned, a Geordie, a Chav, none of these things.
Oh,
Yeah.
Christ, a Geordie. There's no way an American would be able to make head nor tail.
But they could have had a
Geordie.
Geordie with some subtitles underneath and played on the vast range of dialects we have in our wonderful, gutted country.
But I mean, a weird thing is, I don't think they meet anyone who isn't famous in the entire episode.
Apart from
Yeah.
Coffee Guy. Oh, sorry, not Coffee Guy. Cab Butler. Everybody knows him.
Well, and that's the problem when they do meet these famous people. Yeah, you guys brought it up before, and you're right. It's not like a character that's been brought in to
Yeah.
give weight to this episode. It's, what are you doing here, Prime Minister Tony Blair? What are you here, famous transphobe J.K. Rowling? And, you know, it's just there's no weight to it. And
Yeah.
like, you can appreciate some of the jokes. Like, I did like the joke with JK where Lisa's like, so what happens in the last book? He grows up and marries you. Are you happy?
He's like,
yes. Like, but yeah, other than that, it's just, what are you doing here, Sri and McKellen?
Well, let's compare the bit characters in the Bart versus Australia episode to
Yeah.
the ones in this. In Australia, you've got Chuzwazzlers. That's an odd, bullfrogs. That's an odd name. I'd call them Chuzwazzlers. And you've got the
Beer.
B-A, yeah.
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 You've got the Prime Minister. You've got Tobias and his dad. You know, 900
fucking love
Dory
Tobias.
dues is just gold.
Tobias! Oh,
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a bidet, is there? Which, by the way, it's just, and it's not less cruel, because the joke of that is, wouldn't it be funny if an Australian had a bidet? That's the joke of that. So it's not like it's less mean, but it just feels cheekier. It's almost as if they
Yeah.
lean into it, and they're not, I don't know, so afraid of stepping on the toes of British Prime Minister. Tony
What
Blair.
about Big Book of British Smiles is what you wanted?
Oh, yeah.
Like, sure, that's great.
mean.
That's,
Yeah,
it's
they need to be
mean,
shooting
but
like the big calendar of British Smiles 2002, you know?
I don't know. It's just so boring and unsurprising and everything
Yeah.
that it does. There's nothing that makes me go, oh God, imagine if that was true.
Yeah.
Imagine roundabouts.
Well, I mean, I just checked Bart versus Australia. Yeah, the only guest star in that episode is Phil Hartman, and he's not even
Oh,
Australian.
of course, he plays the ambassador. I
Department,
never
yeah.
put that together before.
Yeah.
Oh my, hello.
Yeah, and he's great at it.
Yeah, but I've just noticed, no matter what country they go to, they seem to have a squeaky voice teen in everyone.
Well, yeah, they're universal.
Which is fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we were segueing into it anyway. How about the heart of this episode?
Keep moving.
The emotional resonance.
What
No, it's
a
nothing.
heart, am I right?
Yeah, and for something,
there's-
again,
there's no
that
point.
started out being about, oh, let's do something nice for Marge. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And
She's
then
nice.
also, and it has this subplot where Grandpa's like, oh, met this
Oh,
woman back
Jesus.
before D-Day, and,
Oh, yeah.
I never saw her again. And Lisa's all like, how romantic. He's like, he fucked a woman once, and you're like, oh my God, how romantic. Let's fly to England.
As far
Yeah.
as he's concerned, he lied about being shipped off.
Yeah.
You know, the joke was, I really was being shipped off. Jesus Christ, until you mentioned it there, I had honestly forgotten completely about it.
Yeah.
There's no good joke that comes from that. No
Right.
emotional resonance.
I will say
No.
there was one bit when Mr. Burns gets hit in the chest with a bill. He goes, had my heart been in there at the time, it might have been fatal. So there's
That
your
was
heart.
good.
Yeah. Because, they do nothing with that grandpa story. And it's like they've already got a reason to go to England. Marge wants to go on a holiday.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
why make it all of a sudden about grandpa as well?
Well,
Why have
Especially
Grandpa
when
there?
all you're going to do is just have he now has a daughter joke.
Yeah.
yeah, why add this extra grandpa plot if it will never come up until the very last second?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's very odd.
So misguided.
So now, in addition to having a long lost brother, Herb, Homer apparently has a long lost sister, Abby.
Yeah.
Sister, yeah.
And her mother was played by another guest star in this episode, and I think that's
Jane
all of them now.
Leaves.
Jane
Yeah.
leaves. She sure does.
Daphne.
For those that
Daphne
don't
from
know,
Frasier.
Daphne from Frasier. What do you guys think of her performance?
Why is this a guest star?
Do not
I
give a
didn't
shit.
recognize her. I didn't recognize it as her. I mean, she's the only guest star playing a character, I guess. So
Yep.
God bless her for that. But she's not given anything to do.
I want to tell a story of my Saturday night, right? I got home from work and we had a viewing schedule because before recording this segment, we've recorded our next episode of OGT. And the film we watched
it out
was
now.
The Haunting of Sharon Tate. And that was a woeful time and energy consuming experience. And I was furious come the end of it. I was so angry with how bad it was. And then I went right into watching the Regina Monologues. So I'm willing to admit that there are probably one or two more jokes that would have made me go,
If you weren't so angry with the world.
yeah. So it probably affected my viewing experience a tiny bit, but objectively, I still know that this is no better than that episode, the previous episode that we reviewed
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any better or more meaningful than whatever it's called.
If nothing else, we can offer as viewing advice to all of your listeners there is we really don't recommend watching The Haunting of Sharon Tate just before you watch this episode. It just doesn't add anything, you know?
They do not pair well.
No.
But ultimately, did this feel like an episode of The Simpsons?
Yeah.
Like a
It
bad
felt like
episode
a
of
bad
The
episode.
Simpsons.
Yeah, like a bad episode. This was in keeping with bad Simpsons. The other one I remember, the Michael Cera episode, felt so far removed from what I recognized as The Simpsons. This is a Simpsons episode. It's just not a good one.
Yeah, I guess individual character integrity is mostly okay.
Yeah, moment to
Yeah,
moment, it's
it
fine.
follows
Just
the formula.
overall piece. is
Yeah.
just-
Although we are fully into the era now where Homer is such a fucking oath, such an irredeemable asshole. And like
Yeah.
Bart's just a sassy teenager, and Marge just goes character integrity in as much as your house with no possessions in it anymore because it's been burgled is still your house.
This isn't my house. This isn't my life. Fuck, what's that song? I'm not remembering it.
I think you're thinking of Talking Heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once in a lifetime. There it is. Okay.
Yeah. But yes or no, would you watch this one again?
No.
No, that'll
No,
do.
All right, then we'll move on to what would we change? BT, kick it off.
Matt, stick with any of your plans. Basically, like if you're doing this for Marge, then have her call the shots of what the family's going to doing, and maybe we spring off from there. Or if you want to follow this grandpa thing, follow that. But to just not do anything with either of them, what? Like what the hell? Why even do this? And I mean, like the central conflict was meant to be, something always happens to Homer, and that always, ruins the holiday. But in this, it wasn't really his fault. Like, he accidentally hit the Queen.
Yeah.
And then, he acts about jackass about it, but it was still an accident. Like, it wasn't something he intentionally did. So even that conflict was still stupid. So just think of an idea and go with that. I can't believe I have to say that to John Schwartz. This feels so weird.
How about you, Salt? What would you change?
If you want to be an anti-establishment anarchic sitcom, maybe don't invite the highest level of the establishment in the country that you're satirizing. Just don't have Tony Blair.
At the height of the Iraq War.
At the height of the Iraq War, just make us a comedy that no world leader would be seen dead on. That's the idea. Go back to making, in its heyday, at the best The Simpsons ever was, George Bush Sr. said, the whole world should be more like the Waltons and less like The Simpsons.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you should be aiming for as a comedy.
Yeah.
You should really be aiming to piss off members of authority. You should not be trying to be the cozy, safe, this will be good for tourism and publicity, let's appear on this.
Absolutely.
Fucking...
Yeah, you're
Oh,
so
God.
right. You got a LAN party organised, and you go, "Good news, guys! I brought the teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just...
He doesn't even play Quake."
But he's heard lots about these PCs.
Without Blair there, you could have satirized British culture much more. I mean, the fact that they had to go out of their way to portray the Queen as being such a nice person. Just, it was very nice of her to let us go. And I've known tragedy in my lifetime. Whatever. Just,
Yeah.
They could have gone harder.
The whole speech starts with, I've had a hard life. It's like, yeah, you have, sure.
Yeah, just fucking satirize this properly, and the best way to do that is not to try and cozy up to the British Tourism Board.
Yeah. How about you, Goodman? What would you like to change?
Yeah, two things. The first, I agree with BT. Just you got to have a story there. Got to be about something, like Bart versus Australia. That's how you get your heart. And the second thing is have the woman that Grandpa left be the Queen. and tie it all in at the end. That could have been good, and maybe spend a few more minutes on it.
Because she was in one of the wars, wasn't she? She was.
She
a
drove an ambulance in the First World War, I think.
Second?
No, she would have been too young. Second, yeah.
Yeah. Crazy ambulance driving baby.
I had to figure the King's Speech and was like, no. King's Speech was just pre-war and she was a kid in that. Therefore, hang on a minute. She grew up pretty fucking quick from the King's Speech to being an ambulance driver.
I want to see that comedy, Ambulance Baby Queen.
Yeah, come on. Queenie driver.
She's in a royal mess now.
Oh, it writes itself.
Yeah, look, as for what I'd change... Sorry?
They bring her back for like one last job. But, it's like, but I'm queen of a country now. Oh, if you're going to forget about your family, all right, let's do this.
One is not amused. Bam, bam, bam.
It's the period where one of your grandsons was in the army. Was it Harry?
Yeah.
He's down behind enemy lines. We've got to get an ambulance to him. And you're the only one here. You're match.
Yes!
But I'm 82.
You never lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as for what I'd change, look, I mean, it's hard to like improve on any of you guys' ideas, but yeah, all I'm going to say is that, yeah, having the whole thing with Bart versus Australia be a comment on capital punishment and whatever, even though, yeah, it's totally not a thing here, like, there's just got to be some of that cleverness to go about. But I don't know what you do with that, honestly, and...
Just don't make it about the different famous people you can get in an episode.
Exactly.
And then you have to make it about something. By default, you just have to do something.
Yeah, how is the big note on this make it about something?
Yeah. It's literally smack dab in the middle of my notes is none of this is plot.
Yeah. All right, we're here. Goodman, do you have any other notes?
Do you know what, actually? Another one that took me by surprise was, oh no, this tunnel comes out in the worst possible place. An elephant's butt? Yes, Bart, an elephant's butt. That was so aggressively stupid a line that it just had a bit of the old wackiness to it. It felt like the old when Lisa was doing the experiments on Bart and her hamster, like that kind of level of stupidity, or Rand McNally.
Yeah.
I liked that. Wacko Jacko to Simpo Blimpo was a good piss take of a Daily Mirror headline.
I actually did enjoy those
spinning newspapers.
Yeah, the tabloids and like Bart hung out with Prince Harry during his wild years. That was pretty good.
Yeah. It made me hate England a little bit more, but it's not the Simpsons' fault.
How about you, Salt? Do you have any other notes?
I have a few more notes. Guide me in at the beginning with pleasure, sir. That was kind of gross.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
he
was
has
a bit
a joke
more
for the
overt
dads.
than you're expecting. Yeah, Jesus. Why didn't they spend $1,000 of their $3,000 budget on another $1,000 note and keep the museum open?
Economics, damn it. And how about you, BT? Any other notes?
Yep. I do like the shirt in Bart's Museum that says, I saw $1,000. That's pretty good. Okay.
Sorry, just on that, though. $3,000 cannot get a family of 6 to England, right?
I mean, maybe in 2002, man.
Maybe.
But,
Maybe 2002.
yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, family 6, actually. That is a lot, yeah.
But think about, how many steps it took to get to England. Bart finds $1,000, interviews everyone in the town to see if it's theirs, opens up a museum, makes $3,000 for that, then we go to it. It's like, for fuck's sake.
As a travel agent, actually, I could probably verify this. On a good day, you could probably get their flights. Yeah, when you add hotels into that, oh god,
yeah,
and the markup on that.
Yeah,
and then fish and chips set you back £6 a go.
Yeah, and Judi Dench's is not cheap.
No.
So there's a bit where Homie gets stuck on the roundabout, which first of all happened in National Lampoon's European Vacation like 20 years earlier, and they don't play Roundabout by Yes while they're stuck there. I mean, it's a British band, it's a great song, what's wrong with you people? I did like the line of they're planning to put Homer's head on a pike and there's two guys with like watermelons practicing. He's like, no, force it on, you can't just wiggle it in.
Let the pike do the work for you.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
And the rest of my notes are all just on this Queen being a driver movie we're pitching. I want to get like her dames are like her Charlie's Angels reinforcements. We got like Judi Dench with like a minigun, and Helen Mirren's like got throwing knives, and they're like going deep into enemy territory. I want this movie more than I realized at the beginning of today. I didn't wake up today thinking this would happen, but now I'm excited.
Dames, assemble!
Exactly. And then a little slow motion walking, and yeah.
There's actually just them walking.
Yeah.
Coming soon to an OGT pod review.
Red 3.
One good thing. I think you'd struggle to find one bad thing in that movie.
Time for my final notes. again with Schwartzweldian, when Mr. Burns sees the ATM and he goes, "Oh, an automated telemetronometon." It just didn't have that classic Mr. Burns obscure old language. It just felt like adding extra syllables.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like a pale
clunky
imitation of itself.
And then, your password's your age. 4 digits. Get it. Fuck.
Yeah.
Homer makes a comment at one point, "Oh, I'd like to go to Brazil, but I hear the monkey problem's even worse." This is a reference to their season 13 episode where Brazil were really offended by the portrayal and they banned the episode from syndication. And
See, that's what it used to be like. It used to be they would make an episode about a go-to and the country would be pissed. You know, New Orleans would complain about their portrayal, and now they're all just like, "Oh, come visit England. It's ever so jolly."
yeah.
It's kind of patronizing to us. We can fucking take it. We take the shit out of England all the time.
Yeah.
Give us all you got, fucking John Schwartzwelder.
And he's like, "Oh no, the only person I'll mock is Jimmy Page.
Our national hero. To be fair, I was offended.
He's on the £5 note for a reason."
Because he's not a woman.
There was a great look at America joke. It's like, Homer's like, "Yeah, I'll be on my best behavior. Now, which rifle shall I take?" I actually really liked that joke. And when Homer's in the prison, there's just like a cramming in of British jokes that they just couldn't fit in the rest of the episode. The videotapes are different sizes. Color has the letter U in it. Metric system.
Wacky, wacky, wack.
No, we talk about this all the time. It's just, especially with the Simpsons Go-To episodes, that it feels like whiteboard writing. And this is just whiteboard writing of
This is
highest
whiteboarding
order.
writing with nothing else, though. It's just the whiteboard.
It's time to rank this thing. And who's going to kick it off first? How about you, Salt? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say failure on this one. It didn't achieve what it set out to do, which is to be a fun episode about the Simpsons coming to England. So I think it failed in that respect.
How about you, Goodman?
Yeah, gonna have to be a failure for me. It engendered pretty much nothing from me in terms of reaction, so at least a participant, you notice.
Yeah.
It engendered a lot of anger.
Yeah.
Still failure.
How about you, BT?
Man, I walked in on the room round about a participant, but I then realized over the course of the discussion how many times I went, which is a good indicator that something is annoying the very core of me. And the fact that I had to write down the words, "None of this is plot." And while there's some jokes I think are okay, there's nothing to this. You could cut any part of it and it would not matter whatsoever.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
for just an abysmal failure of a plot, I can't believe I'm doing this to a Schwartzweldian, but kick it in the pit of failure.
Oh, man.
Wow. I'm going to go participant on this one because, I just compare it to a lot of failures that we've done, and it doesn't have that, character integrity break that I'm personally looking for when I see a failure. The plot's nonsense, and none of it fucking matters, and it did leave me angry, but I just got to say, it still felt kind of Simpsons-y.
Just skirted by.
It really did. Overall, this will equal a shiny failure. It will be the third episode from season 15 to be called a shiny failure. It'll be joining Codependence Day. That's the one where Marge and Homer really get into drinking, and then he puts her in the driver's seat and gets her a DUI.
Yep, and suffers no repercussions for his actions.
Mm-hmm.
Have I seen that one? I don't think I've seen that.
I have. I remember being sad about that.
It's also got a big Phantom Menace subplot in it where Bart and Lisa complain about the new Cosmic Wars movie.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds relevant and on point.
This is like repressed memories.
And also Marge versus Saskatag, where the seniors, childless couples, and teens and gays want to ban children from Springfield or some shit.
Yeah.
That's right, yep.
Yeah.
God, this was a bad series. What's the highest rated? Do you have a note there on the highest rated episode of the season as far as you guys are concerned?
Oh, it's an equal first with Fraudcast News, which we reviewed the other week, where Mr. Burns buys out all the media outlets in Springfield and Lisa starts up her own little independent...
The Red Dress Press,
Yeah,
I remember that, yeah.
And also Simple Simpson, where Homer assumes the superhero identity of Pie Man.
I remember that too, yeah.
I've seen none of this season. Fuck, I'm lucky.
These are still the highest rated episodes at Dull Gold, so, you know.
Yeah, and one of them is a dull gold because I think it was silver cubic.
Yeah.
So
it was a weird split, that one.
It was a weird split.
We argued with Sheridan about that. All right, guys. 2 bad episodes in. You have earned a very, very good episode.
Damn right we have.
We are going to watch Season 6's Itchy and Scratchy Land. We'll be back. And we are back, and we just watched our classic and final episode of the evening. This was Season 6, Episode 4, Itchy and Scratchy Land.
Yay!
Yay! First released in October of 1994, it was directed by Wes Archer, written by Judd Sportswelder.
I was going to say a different
Yay,
name,
the
and then
hero!
I forgot it.
You trolled me this time. In this episode of Itchy and Scratchy Land, what more do I need to say? Hey, what do we think?
Yeah,
Really
it's great. It's really
Really
good.
loved it. Fuck me, what a relief.
Yeah.
Just, my note-taking hand is sore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have so many jokes that I just loved. But you know what? If the episode we just talked about felt like sort of observations based on cultural impressions, this felt way more first-hand. This felt like observations of actual family trips that the writers have probably been on, that John Swartzwelder has probably been on.
Yeah.
And so the comedy just feels so much more authentic. The
Yeah.
whole flickies thing, 50 miles to
God.
flickies, 20 miles
So
to
good.
flickies, and then flickies is like, oh.
But yeah, you're right. It's not just a direct parody of Disneyland, but it's family vacations in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the whole radio thing, that must have been observed. The 7 signs of evil. That's just firsthand.
Here's Vanessa Williams.
The itchy lot thing,
Yeah.
the itchy
Yeah.
lot and the scratchy lot, just, that's observed.
Oh, it rules. It's such a wonderful episode, and it makes watching the direct so much worth it on our program. So let's hook into our questionnaire. We'll start with you this time, Goodman. For better or worse, what stands out to you?
Oh, so much. So much. Do you know what? It's such a relief. I watched this, but in preparation for this, I decided to watch a couple of episodes of old Simpsons earlier in the week. When I was drunk, I Googled a list of the top 10 best episodes of The Simpsons of all time.
You didn't go to a
And,
spreadsheet that would put them in some kind of category? Like available, say, on the simpsonsindex.com?
I don't do XML.
Okay.
And the first two that came up were Rosebud and Cape Fear. And watching those, I realised there are jokes every 5 seconds in this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every single one of them works. The only difference between this and Rosebud and Cape Fear is there are like 2 jokes or so that didn't work for me. And because it was such a high watching this episode, every time there was a slight bum note, I went, oh, God, what's that? Why isn't everything about this episode perfect? So, because Bort is one of the best Simpsons jokes of all time.
Yeah,
For real.
It is up there with Sideshow Bob and the Rakes. And
Just the silliness of it. And, when we went to Simpsonsville, what did they call it?
Simpsons World and Universal.
Yeah, and it's weird because they don't actually have bought license plates there. They have bought Quickie Mart name badges.
Yeah.
weird.
right. Okay. I guess it's still Bort.
Yeah, but the thing is, when we went there, and we feel like this is intentional, it was out.
Yeah.
I mean, you had to ask at the counter if they had any more, and they did. But I mean, I feel like hopefully that was them actually, they're only available on request, and there's always out of port license plates.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Hopefully.
But, there are jokes, there are setups here and payoffs, and they're all just amazing. With a dry cool wit like that.
That could be an action hero.
The punchline with Homer fading out as Bart talks over him is, I was eating food, and it shames me to be such a cliche, but I almost spat it out. It was that brilliant.
Well, it's so rare that, you watch a TV show or movie and characters will ever talk over each other, and that it can work in such a funny way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot about it, and it was so seamless. And I think there's a seamlessness with which the Simpsons, classic Simpsons, just reels off joke after joke. No, there's nothing forced about it. There's nothing nudge, nudge, wink, wink about it at all. It's not, this is another joke, guys, pause for laugh. It's just constant. And it really feels like you've got a team of writers who are all thinking so fucking hard about the best joke they can ever do. And then all of them making it work in the same episode. Possibly go wrong. It's so wonderfully contrived. Like the fact that somebody had to think of that as a sign that something would go wrong is, I know it's not fun to deconstruct comedy, but sometimes you just have to just point to it and go, look at how good that joke was. Just look at it.
How about you, BT? What stands out to you from this episode for better or worse?
I want to point out all the times that Simpson broke... Can take that again.
Broke your mind.
I'm gonna point out all the time that Simpsons broke my brain because there's No. Ask your mother.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm trying to like convince myself of something. Now remember, we're in the itchy lot. Anytime I park anywhere.
Yeah. Especially because I've got no memory for where I park, and like I always think about getting one of those colorful antennas. Every car should have one of those. And
Take a photo when you get in the mall, man. Jeez. Anytime I like open up the battery slot for something, just I really wish they wouldn't scream.
Yeah.
And anytime anyone offers me wine, it's like, my children need wine. It just ingrained itself in my brain.
Just watching this, I couldn't believe how many like points of references from like Simpsons meme sites take from this episode. Yeah, whether it's down to Bort or the Possible Eye or oh my god, we'll get into more of those. But Salt, how about you? What stands out to you for better or worse?
Oh, God. I mean, first of all, yeah, Bort is the best joke in the entire episode, and it's one that my family regularly sort of talk about. And what's beautiful about it, I think, is that you can see how it evolved. There's a really good video, actually, called The Fall of the Simpsons, How It Happened by Super Eye Patch Wolf on YouTube.
Oh, yeah?
And in it, he explains how Simpsons jokes used to work. And they would be that you'd get an initial joke, and then a sort of spin-off joke, and then a sort of spin-off joke from that. And so you can see how the Bort thing comes about of just, wouldn't it be funny if Bart's looking for a license plate, and it doesn't have his name, but has something ludicrously close to his name?
Yeah.
That's part one. And then, okay, yeah, but what if he then encounters someone immediately called Bort? And then that person gets mistaken for someone else who's also called Bort.
It's
and
riffing,
then later
isn't it?
on you can have this great callback, and it's just, it grows, and it's so good.
And then later when they're at like the central call center unit and they're like, we're out of Bort license plates.
Yeah.
Also, the level of detail with some of this stuff is great. What have I got here? The fact that I'd never noticed this before until this viewing. When they go to the pleasant log flume ride that turns into a nightmare, it's a banjo version of the Itchy and Scratchy theme that's playing. Yeah. And then when later on, when they're at the disco scene, it's the disco version of the fucking Itchy and Scratchy.
This is the first time I noticed it as well. It's insane.
Yeah, that's so good. And also, I love how many odd voices there are in this one. Like, you can really tell this was a fun one to voice act. You've got, okay, throw in the hole.
Yeah.
That's great. You be good, Benicio. I promise I will never hurt you. Ouch!
So good. There's a Friendly Geordies video about the most underrated Simpsons characters of all time, and it's all things like that, just like the one-off, I really wish they wouldn't scream, or we don't know if single people eat our crackers. Frankly, we don't want to know. And it's just the stories that these
the pause
bit
there is great
characters
on
have.
that joke of just, frankly...
Yeah, the implication that day after day this guy's gone into work and had to open up robots, and every time it screams, it's just like, why? Why?
The inner world of this of that
Hints
guy
so much,
is marvelous, and I love the way the mascots scream when Bart does stuff to them.
I just wanted to entertain.
Oh god.
But no, you're right. The production on the like alternate Itchy and Scratchy themes is wonderful, and like it's what stands out to me is this episode like must have been so fucking difficult for them because there is just alternate versions of Simpsons character models, Simpsons music, just all over the place, and like it's only to its detriment occasionally where you look at them and like, what's wrong with Homer's eyes in that scene? And like, because there's a lot of very new drawings. They weren't going back to old models for this one. And like the level of detail is just astounding and inspiring.
Yeah, Homer has a green jacket on. That's new and different.
Wow.
I know.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a great little Simpsons worst faces kind of moment, but it's intentional. It's when, you know, they're begging Marge to go to Itchy and Scratchy. She's like, no, we're going to the Highway 9 Bird Sanctuary. This has this shot of Bart Lee's face.
Is that odd?
So good.
It looks so wrong, but so funny.
Yeah, because their mouth holes are like slightly lower where their overbite is, so it looks very odd. But yeah,
it works. It's funny though.
Yeah,
it is kind of creepy.
It's shaped like a diner, and it's on this really tall pole.
It's attention to detail and care that goes into this, you know, with the sight gags, for example. I don't remember a single sight gag from the last two episodes where I went, that's even remotely good. You know, the free way to some other state. Just so brilliantly flippant. And the visual punchline of, which one of you is the mailman?
Yeah.
And the pet's eyes.
And they look at each other.
Glancing towards each other.
That was great.
It's comedy on so many levels, and none of it is, did you get it? Like a joke.
Yep.
And also, even just like overt, like a physical gag. you can imagine how a newer episode would do it. Like, overproduced, following it. In this, Homer gets kicked by a donkey and gets kicked out of frame when he's reminiscing about Amish land.
Yeah.
You know, they can't do a thing. And then the donkey just kicks him, and it's just a great crack sound, and he's disappeared from the frame.
Yeah.
And it's really kinetic and visual and classic cartoon violence. And it's perfect.
Now, what I really liked about that scene is something I've never noticed before is, it starts with Homer just, pushing ice creams onto all these Amish people, but then it pans back and there's just ice creams on everybody.
Yeah.
Like he's been doing this for hours. And I never noticed all the extra ice creams before.
Yeah, there's a charming quality to Homer's dickish behavior in this stage.
Yeah.
There's a childish delight to it. Like, he's doing it because it really makes him happy. I feel like at some point, maybe Dan Castellaneta just didn't want to voice him giggling anymore, because I miss his... It feels like he used to giggle all the time. Like, I don't see him do that anymore.
true.
Maybe they phased
it's a
that
shame.
out.
No, it's a good point. And I guess what's really working and leading into the wackiness of this episode, those cutaway jokes and Shark Boy, like they have relevance to the plot and they're weighted by something.
Yeah, it's
and
character
like
stuff.
what separates this from feeling like just whiteboard writing about Disneyland versus a story about the Simpsons going to a Disneyland-like place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the thread of this that doesn't really get picked up on, is the idea of Homer and Bart's bond, which is that Bart is learning his bad behavior from Homer. The Shark Boy thing. Later on, the fact that... when it's sort of like, how are you a political prisoner? I kicked a mouse in the butt! You didn't even draw your diagram.
And it's like, no one ruins my family vacation except for me and maybe the boy.
Yeah, like he has a kind of pride in it, you know? Like he's kind of proud of his son for being such a dick sometimes.
Do you know what, actually? The political prisoner joke was the one that I wrote down as not working for me.
Oh, really?
Okay.
It felt like a bit tipping towards new Homer for me.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because he was too mean.
Well, as long as we're on negatives, the part that's always stuck out to me is kind of weird is when Marge orders the baby guts and the guy's like, lady, you discuss it. Mom, that's veal. Like, did she order it not knowing what it was? And then did she just
guess
go,
there's a leap.
baby guts? That sounds good. I'm confused.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
she went for cute. She just went for everything's meant to sound disgusting, and so she just found something that was cute on the menu.
guess.
But it's odd to me that the waiter would be disgusted by an item that's on their menu.
Yeah.
I have been guilted by a vegan waiter before.
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Well, I'm lactose intolerant, so I was in a restaurant saying, hey, which of these dishes have dairy in? Because I will shit myself. And he went, well, I choose to not eat dairy, but if you want to choose any of these meat dishes also. Like, why would you mention that you choose to not eat dairy?
Yeah.
Did
I
I
suddenly go,
didn't
well,
ask
this
you.
is about me now.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you asked, mate, because here's Earthlings.
I would like a lamb cutlet, please, delivered on your hand.
I'd like to
I want to eat it
from
off your
face.
hand, mate.
You can cook it with the burning indignation coming off of your face.
And if you don't do that, TripAdvisor is going to become a fucking nightmare for you, my friend.
God.
And yeah, just another negative point when they're on the ride, which is like them running into a hallway and getting avoided being chopped by a giant meat cleaver.
Yeah.
They then
Yeah.
stand in the way for a very long time.
Yeah.
And
Like people at Disney World.
yeah, actually, that's a good point. And you don't see the people getting cleaved
Right.
off stage.
Even like, at a shopping mall where people just stand at the exit of the escalator. You're like, right there? Really? Okay.
Yeah, fuck me.
Have you met people, Elliot?
I think my incredibly petty point about something that stood out to me, I feel like the bit where they're in a helicopter to the island with the possibly play go wrong, it's very funny. Maybe it was a late addition, because it's pretty seamless, them arriving at the car park, and then when it cuts to them going into Itchy and Scratchy Land, it looks like the frontage goes straight onto the car park.
Yeah.
It really doesn't look like there needs to be
Yeah.
an nor does it feel like they're on an island.
Yeah, they just wanted that Jurassic Park reference.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. They
Yeah.
just wanted that. And it's a funny bit.
I guess you enjoy it so much, you don't think about the mechanics
kinda-
behind it.
I kind of noticed
Nah,
that this
not
time
when I was
as well.
a kid,
Yeah.
certainly.
But no, they're going for the double Crichton reference in this as well because the robots are a bit Westworld-ish.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Double down on the Crichton.
So what about other wacky moments? What stands out to you guys?
The log ride in general.
Yeah.
Hans Moleman's in this. Wait, wackiness or whackness?
Yeah, both.
Because if we're talking about wacky moments, you've got Hans Moleman, and everything
Yeah.
that Hans Moleman touches turns to gold.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the line now.
I need the largest seed bell you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's
too
too big. That's great. And just the sound of birds slamming against the glass while he's doing it.
And again, being a nice callback to something Marge set up so early in the episode that she thought she'd have a nicer time at the bird sanctuary.
But, nope, chaos.
That was going to be my favourite wacky thing. It's just how immediate... So many of the gags are just a character gets immediately contradicted.
Yeah.
And that's really fun. It's just, we should have gone to the bird sanctuary. Cut to the bird sanctuary being an absolute fucking nightmare. You know, oh, who's named Board? Cut to guy named Board.
Yeah.
I hope this isn't happening at Euro Itchy Scratchy Land.
Yeah.
Cut to that being a disaster. And just,
Yeah.
I
The way
love
you to
how
refuse.
readily at hand the world is to just contradict whatever it is that you've just said. It feels like you kind of get an impression of the writers, which is fun. The writers being like pranksters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of wackiness, the episode of Itchy and Scratchy at the beginning,
Of course.
it just
Oh, yeah.
straight away was just being dunked into this warm bath of nostalgia for me. Again, it's the 5 seconds. There's a joke every 5 seconds. When Itchy's talking about Itchy and Scratchy Land, and Scratchy's sitting there just with his tongue out in that, got to give the animators a rest, but it's such a beautiful resting face from Scratchy.
I love the resting faces of early Simpsons.
Yeah. But then they have the cutting the sign in half and going into Scratchy's brain, and then he pulls it out and then immediately goes, "Ugh." It's just like constant ramping up of the grossness of this. And it's just so much effort goes into making every beat of this work. It's so sad. It feels so like you're being respected by somebody who's sleeping with you.
No,
I can't imagine that.
absolutely. And like that leads into a point in this episode that really sticks out for me is that there was so much of this episode cut from the syndicated version. And
Oh, really?
yeah, so I don't know if it was the same for you guys, but like we've noticed it a bit where certain violent jokes especially get cut from Simpsons episodes in Australia. But in this scene alone, the chainsaw bit where Itchy chainsaws off Scratchy's abs was cut. So
Oh, really?
the version I was familiar with, it just weirdly cuts from the needle.
Pinprick to, Scratchy looking
So he
all
suddenly
messed
got
up and
meat
we're not
bits.
sure why.
Good lord.
And ticket prices in half. There was no scissor stabbing in the version I'm aware of.
Nope.
So it's weird
Oh, wow.
how parts of this episode still feel new to me.
Wow.
That would be weird. I mean, we got it all in the UK on
Yeah.
But
Sky. I don't remember it ever being censored.
I don't know. I have seen some episodes of The Simpsons when I was in the UK that would cut sex jokes, like the very rare few. The one that sticks out is where Homer comes home late. I think he crashes the car, and the insurance guy is talking to him. He's like, "So this Moe's you came from? What's that exactly?" He's like,
Pornography.
"I can't tell him it was a bar, but what else is open that late?" And the line is, "Pornography store. I was buying pornography," but it's just cut.
You know what? I think I've had that cut as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So it's interesting. Different cultures prudish about different things.
I think there was a difference between the Sky and the Channel 4 version as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the Channel 4. So why would I?
See,
That was my after school sort of enjoyment period.
Well, that's- yeah.
That and Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
I remember when it was on BBC Two.
Oh, that's it.
BBC Two
That's
at
it.
6
BBC
o'clock,
Two.
Yeah.
This is very good UK centric chit chat now.
Well, that's the British Broadcasting Network. Network. Fuck. What's the C?
Network. C silent.
Chance. It's
Corporation.
Corporation. I'll do the British
Crumpets.
Broadcasting.
yeah.
Crappers.
But yeah, other cut jokes were when Marge is looking at the map, Torture Land, Explosion Land.
Yeah.
The ones that were cut for us were Searing Gas Pain Land and Unnecessarily
Really?
Surgery
How
Land.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
weirdly.
punchline.
enough.
Although
of the joke.
Australia's a little bit more trigger happy with its censorship, right? You often have trouble with video games.
Yeah, not so much now, fortunately, since
Okay.
we got the R rating introduced at some.
Still, there are the occasional one. Anything that promotes drug use as a positive gets cut.
Yeah, what's the fucking
Wow.
2D game that got Katana Zero? That got
It
banned.
got
Oh my
delayed, not
God.
banned. We did get
Just
it
that-
eventually.
It was banned briefly.
Yeah.
It was refused
Okay.
classification. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Katana Zero of all things. And my other
Yeah.
note for cut was, Scratch Tasia, which, this is a mess to watch in the syndicated version because they're doing, all these fades to get around, all the lengthy scenes of axe chopping and stuff. Yeah, so watching it now is just an absolute delight. So, look, there is so much more wackiness to go over. Let's return to it later and talk now about the emotional core. How was the heart in this episode?
I mean, it's all Marge-centric, I think. And, I think it gets well supported throughout, unlike the last one, where it's just she's just asked for a calm, normal vacation where they all have a good time. And then you get the, Attention, Marge Simpson. We've arrested your son.
Yeah.
We've also arrested your
Yeah.
older, bolder, fatter
bolder,
son.
fatter son.
And again, just to kind of point out what you were saying before about immediate cuts too, was like someone else in the room going, I'd be terribly embarrassed if that was my boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's just always someone there to just make it a bit worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right after
love
she
that.
said we're having a best vacation ever and get him t-shirts made and
Yeah.
But and I love the conclusion of that, where Lisa's like, that was our best vacation ever. And Marge's like, what are you talking about? You know, we got a lot of exercise outside. We
Yeah.
bonded as a family.
Yeah.
We have so many memories.
You're right. Now let's never talk of it again.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to for me. Is it comes down to, once again, that brilliant thing of The Simpsons always having the message, but in like a slightly darker or
Yeah.
messed up
Yeah.
or utterly perfunctory way.
Yeah.
Which episode is it that ends with, Marge, honey, I haven't learned a thing? It's sexual harassment, isn't it? And then he goes and hugs his television. That was it. But it's similar in this, in as much as it's like, oh, but Marge wanted a nice vacation. But it was a nice vacation because of these really arbitrary points that don't prove it was a nice vacation.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're right. I guess I was proven wrong. Moving on. Let's never talk of this again.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
and a second message a little while later where it's like the whole thing about violence. Like, you wouldn't think it was funny if it was happening to you, but
Yeah.
someone watching us, you know, would find it funny. And then Lisa just throwing her shoe at Bart
Yeah.
and ending on just the anticlimactic note of her going, yeah, I'm just going off to bed.
Yeah.
Anticlimactic,
That's such a
right.
wonderful
Yeah.
twist.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Lisa, go to your room.
Yeah, it is such a weird, like you said, anticlimactic end for such a big bombastic episode.
I love
Such
that.
a sharp about face for Marge in those 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It got one of the biggest
my.
laughs out of me of the whole episode.
Oh, yeah, I think you have to bring it back to, the Simpson home. This wacky adventure is over now, and now they're just people in a house.
Yeah.
Well, I love it when Marge isn't just the straight person, you know, isn't just the stick in the mud. And here she's found something funny, she regrets it, and she's going to take that out on Lisa because
Yeah.
she's kind of a jerk as well. And I like it when Marge is kind of a jerk as well.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
The Simpsons are horrible.
Well, Lisa got to be the one that threw the shoe.
Yeah.
Like,
It was for
Yeah.
science,
Yeah, exactly.
Elliot.
It's
It was
for
a part,
science.
Yeah.
Observe.
If you say observe before you do something wrong, it's not wrong.
yeah.
Observe.
So, yeah, the emotional core of this episode, it's not like one of your classic Simpsons heartfelt, but yeah, you get a little bit of
No,
it.
it's not a do it for her or anything.
But ultimately, did it feel like an episode of The Simpsons? Were the characters behaving
yeah.
like themselves?
Oh, boy,
Sure.
yeah.
Fuck yeah. This is prime Simpsons. This is what I think of when I think of The Simpsons.
Yeah. Every character just roaring success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Homer's like his oafish self, but I think you're right. It's like more of a childish glee, and
Yeah. It's back to Australia, America, Australia,
Yeah.
America.
Yeah, he's really excited about getting to take his invisible dog leash on vacation.
That was such an odd one too, because just what's he gonna do with that? He's just gonna be.
He's going
It's
to
just
wear
a
it with his
bad
lobster
joke.
hat.
He's just gonna annoy people with it.
Yeah.
He's not gonna prank anyone. He's just gonna be lame with it. That was great.
The first joke in this episode that made me secure in the knowledge that this was a proper Simpsons episode was was Itchy and Scratchy finishing with Krusty saying, "Go on, kids, go away. You won't be missing anything funny here. I'll just be sitting here reading a grown-up newspaper."
I just like you heard the talking rat,
Yeah.
the cartoon rat. Sorry.
The crapness of what the Krusty the Clown show is
Yeah.
Yeah, he just doesn't give a
gold.
shit.
Yeah.
No, he's got a sponsorship deal. He's fulfilling it. He's making the kids go bug their parents to buy shit the only way he knows how.
Now he's got to read this grown-up newspaper. Makes me want to, label more things as grown-up.
Yeah?
Yeah.
see.
Like on this grown-up podcast.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to be going to driving my grown-up car to my grown-up job.
And maybe later I'll drink some grown-up beer.
Well, yeah, I think even for a Simpsons go-to where they're taking them out of their element, they're all behaving like themselves. The show's on fire.
Yeah.
But yes or no, would you watch it again?
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely watch it again because I scroll through these all the time. So yeah,
Because it's still some of the best TV in existence.
yeah. Those first 8 seasons are just sheer classic television.
So,
Absolutely.
Episodes that we do want to watch again, unlike the previous two, we like to think about what playlist would they go in. What are some other Simpsons episodes that would pair well with this one?
Duff Gardens. I
Oh,
think,
yeah,
because
going to theme parks.
similar
various-
kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there are any other domestic trips that they do rather than like
Yeah.
internationals.
Going to Knoxville, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Everybody remember, we're parked under the globe.
Yeah.
I'm going to say appearances of Little Bastard products. So
Oh,
Bart's
yep,
got
yep.
the Little Bastard traveling kit.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And previously the little bastard clock tampering kit.
Little
and-
bastard disguise kid. And
Yeah.
Also, I think the trip to New York is also a domestic trip.
Oh,
Yeah.
And the capital city back in season 1 or 2 when Homer becomes a mascot.
Yeah. Dancing Homer. That's right.
Dancing Homer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Itchy and Scratchy episodes as well. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Itchy and Scratchy versus Marge.
Yep.
Itchy and Scratchy and Poochie. Like,
The one where there's the dispute of how he got invented. The day the laughter died, is it?
yeah, that's right. Viewed
Yeah.
that recently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. You could do a good Itchy and Scratchy run.
Yeah.
An Itchy and Scratchy movie.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course. Duh.
Oh, wait.
Another Sports Worldian classic. All right. Yeah, that's some good playlists. BT, is there anything you'd like to change about this episode?
I don't believe so. I mean, a couple of there are a few jokes that are a little bit off, as we were saying earlier, but I don't think they're, terrible. They're just little things you want to buff out, maybe.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty reasonably happy with this.
How about you, Salt? Would you like to change anything about this episode?
Honestly, I'm reaching, to say anything here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say this. When it's a great gag, Marge says it must be so wonderful. It's amazing to me. We've been talking about this for half an hour and there's still jokes we haven't even touched upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could probably go for an hour, twice as long as the actual episode, and not mention every joke in this thing. But when they go to TGI Fridays, I like the fact that they all have fun in the park as well. I think that's kind of important.
Yeah.
Is that they actually have a fun time. But whilst they're in TGI Scratchy Land or whatever it's called, it must be so wonderful to ring in the new year every single day. And the guy just says, please kill me.
Yeah.
Which gets a call back later in the control room with
Yeah.
we have a jumper on top of
Another
TGI
jumper,
Scratchy.
Yeah.
So another
That's so
jumper,
great.
yeah.
So my incredibly small thing I would change is I probably wouldn't have Dan Castellaneta voice that character because it did distract me how similar to Homer's voice that is this time. But honestly, I've seen this episode like 100 times and it's the first time I've noticed that. So
No,
there
fair
you go.
enough.
I'd change that. I'd have either I'd have Dan do a
Don't do it, Dan. Do
different
that.
voice or get a different person to do it.
And how about you, Goodman? What would you like to change?
Nah, I can't think of anything. It feels parsimonious of me to say that one joke that I didn't like, make it better. You're never going to get every single joke to work for every single person. It's
Yeah.
such a great episode.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change a thing.
No, it's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
it's damn inspiring how good this episode is.
Yeah.
And yeah, far
It
better
really
from
is.
me. Even though that walking in the hallway cutting thing doesn't make sense from a staging point, but whatever. All right, and we're here. Goodman, do you have any other notes?
I really liked the joke when Homer's driving and he's saying he's not tired at all, and then it cuts to that slow car drag into the pole, then exploding, and
Yeah.
then cutting
Yeah.
into the motel to say, "Oh, glad that wasn't us."
So, okay, here's something that I still don't get at this joke, and I maybe should be embarrassed. But so the people in the car where Homer's like, I'm not tired at all, are they the Simpsons?
Yes,
No,
I think that's the idea. Is
Yeah.
they're the Simpsons, and then we cut to later on when they're in the hotel
Unrelated
and
car,
an unrelated
Right.
purple car crashes.
But it's a great reveal in itself, but just the animation specifically of the car slowly drifting into the pole before exploding is
Yeah.
so satisfying.
Yeah, the immediacy of the explosion.
And then, the
Yeah.
quick pullback and reveal. Like,
Yeah.
there's another good pullback joke, actually, where, Marge is like, your kid's going to be all right, kids? And then they're already back on the log ride.
Yeah.
And
So
I love
many.
the sort of
Yeah.
that's a great noise.
Good noise.
All right. Salt, how about you? Any other notes?
Recipe related bumper cars. That's just great.
It's a
They
weird thing
don't
for
even
Marge to
need-
go, ooh.
Well, they've got to think, like, what would Marge like?
Yeah.
It just feels like such a shit kind of thing to have come up with. And I love that weird moment of pause between Bart and Lisa when they feel like they're going to get their way. And they just look at each other
Yeah.
for a few
Yeah.
beats
Yeah.
of completely frozen animation. And,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of jokes that you can do with completely frozen animation and holding on it. Yeah, it recalls one of my favorite jokes from Futurama, which involves just a still shot of Bender. But
Yeah, the
somewhere in
Poplars
Babyface.
episode, right?
The poplar, yeah, it was the problem
Yeah.
with Poplars, where they're like, and you were stepping on them for fun. Cut to just Bender for a few
Yeah.
moments for saying nothing. And yeah, it's one of my favorite gags in that show. Yup, I would say that the little axe does look cute.
Yeah.
It's adorable.
The way he
isn't it?
does the Disney sort of skipping run in order to catch up with the other axes.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
beautiful.
That's great. And that just about does it for my notes on this episode. Now let us never speak of it again.
Oh, like in the episode.
Well, we have to get through BT, your final notes.
And I've always got plenty. I just bought this Bible for $15 and talk about a preachy book. Everyone's a sinner. Except for this guy. Bart's dead. That's right. Dead serious about going to Extreme Scratchy Land.
Oh, another popular format for the meme sites. And of course, I'm not thinking of any of my favorites right now.
Nah, of course. Another joke I didn't really notice until this one. They talk about Parent Island and go, it has 100 bars and saloons and a world-credited chemical dependency clinic.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
goddamn.
Yeah, that wasn't cut from syndication. That was just cut from my mind because I didn't get it.
Yeah, and the fact that
Yeah.
one little section of this amusement park has 100 bars and saloons.
Yeah. I just thought of one. Mom, Dad, Scoey's dead. Mendoza.
There we go. When do you show the deadly consequences on TV? That mouse pulled out that cat's lungs and played them like a bagpipe. And the next scene, the cat was breathing comfortably, just like in real life. And I love the guy who drink, kind of runs away.
I love the sound of a guy running off.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and speaking of like one-time Simpsons characters that never come up again, but yeah, this
Yeah.
guy like
He just keeps popping up.
popping up just to explain stuff into this episode and move
And
the
Marge
plot
is-
along.
Yeah.
And Marge is never surprised that he arrives.
Yeah.
Yeah, just dirty, maybe. Dangerous, hardly.
Dirty baby.
How do we not talk about babies love the ballroom? They're getting
That's
restless. Add more balls.
She was one of my favourite NPCs in this. More
Yeah.
balls.
Well, it's time for my final notes, but before we do, BT,
We've not done this.
we haven't done this.
Oh my gosh.
BT, the question.
Okay, guys, so for our first time guest, which I'm stunned that you are seeing as we had this first part 7 months ago, we'd like to ask if you could have a sandwich named after you, what would be on that sandwich? Or if that's too hard of a
Holy
question, because
shit.
that is very difficult, the simple version is, what's the best sandwich?
I think I'd like to answer both because it's the best sandwich is obviously the Reuben sandwich.
Yeah, concur.
Yep, that is. It's so funny you say that. So many of the sandwiches on our sandwich board are variations
I mean,
on a Reuben.
it's like saying,
Yeah.
if you could have any color sky, what would it be? But as a backup question, what color is the sky?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well, blue, and if I could have anything red. But
Yeah, but the thing is now I've got to think of something that's better than a Reuben. And
well, just have to be signature to you.
What is the Paul
yeah,
Goodman?
okay, yeah. So it's not going to be better than a Reuben because I'm
No,
going to
no.
make it.
Yeah.
Gosh, I think it's just the sandwich that best suits me is the one that I would eat after about 6 beers. It doesn't fucking matter what's in the sandwich. It's just great, and it does the job. So it's just bread, and then bread, but also beer.
I like the menu option there. So, yeah, the Goodman bread, bread with a beer.
Yeah. How about you, Salt? What's on the Paul Salt?
So, my favourite sandwich is a croque monsieur, which is a fancy way of saying a ham and cheese, toasty.
Yeah.
And so, in the way I do them is a couple of slices of very strong mature cheddar, and then a little bit of mozzarella in there so that it gets nice and stretchy,
Yep.
and then a slice of good quality ham of some sorts. You butter the outside of the sandwich and then put it just on a frying pan in order to nicely toast it up and press it flat when you've managed to turn it. So, yeah, I think that's my go-to, and I'm very hungry for it right now. But it is near midnight. It's near 1 o'clock in the morning, so I probably shouldn't eat one.
I
Yeah.
mean,
But
Do you boys have money in big sandwich? Is that why you ask these questions?
we're just sandwich enthusiasts, man.
Yeah. And yeah, don't forget to find our hidden sandwich board on the simpsonsindex.com for all of our guests' previous sandwich entries.
It's quite a list now. We pretty much have a menu.
oh, do you know what? Here's what I'll do to make it just a little more pool.
Yeah.
And I'll lose you half your listeners, which will
Get out
help
pineapple?
out. It'll be easier to admin. Here we go. Whilst you're eating that particular croque monsieur, what you do, you get bar chocolate just on the go, and in between bites of your sandwich, just take a little bite of that chocolate.
Holy shit.
I can't tell you to put chocolate in a croque monsieur. That's too perverse. But just have it on the go, and just when the sweetness has gone through your mouth, just have a little bite, and then carry on with your cheese toasty.
I like how you looked around you first just to make sure there was no one who
I had to make sure.
infiltrated your house who were like, gonna take you out for that one.
If the British police, if Tony Blair finds out about this, he's gonna fucking take me out. So
Flying on his jetpack.
He'll fly you up to the atmosphere and then just let go.
Yep.
as he's every want to do.
Queen will feed you to the corgis.
No, they're so small it takes ages.
That's the torturous part. They're just nibbling me. God help.
It's so cute though.
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why
It's the most adorable death ever.
Time for my final notes. I've got an ace up my sleeve. Honk.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course. All right, we're here. Let us never speak of the shortcut again.
Yeah.
Like he's got like homecoming queen banner on the car and like a US military missile embedded in the front. It's like, where did you go?
Had to replace one of his tires with a wagon wheel at one point. I had to look this up because they do a joke about John Travolta working at the TGI McScratchies.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this episode was released in October of 94.
Yep.
Pulp Fiction released in October of 94.
Yeah.
So,
Ah.
yeah, of course they would have produced this episode long before
Yeah.
the Travolta songs.
Right, yeah.
Travolta.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I know what you mean
Yes, it's
by
fun to
Travolta
remember a
songs, but-
time. A crazy time where John Travolta had no cultural relevance.
It's hard to imagine.
Don't even know what you're talking about.
The Minefield section was sponsored by Laramie Cigarettes. I thought that was interesting.
That looks so much fun. I remember as a kid thinking, oh, I wish I could exist in real life.
Yeah.
That was great. But how? How? Literally how?
Yeah. I love just how none of these rides can work without killing people. It's wonderful.
Especially the log ride where it stops in their exact profile.
Yeah.
It's like, so if anyone else rode this.
When I was a kid, like, genuinely, I got worried about that. Like, well, what if Lisa and Bart swapped seats?
There
Absolutely.
for the grace of log.
Ooh.
Hey.
Fuck, I'm tired.
Just
Yeah.
making sure it's all working on your end, Salt, because we lost your video. Everything else is all right?
He's eating a sandwich.
Ah, okay, fair.
You can't see this.
No, they got him. The Bobbies have got him.
Toy.
What's all this stuff?
No!
Another Frank joke that I use all the time, and I think Futurama use all the time as well, is like, oh, forgot to carry the one.
Yeah, carry the one, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry the one playlist. Like, there's one in Futurama where Hermes on his calculator just has a button for carry the one. So good. And my final note is just Homer just hurling whatever he finds at the robots.
Yeah.
Wallet and change.
Yeah. And it's focused on Homer. It doesn't show
Yeah.
them hitting the robots. It's just
Yeah,
him
it's just the
digging into
sound
his
effect
pockets.
reaction. Like the banana, just the squelch.
That's great, the ineffectualness of it.
Yeah.
One other bit is just, I know you mentioned earlier on I really wish they wouldn't scream, but I feel like the scream itself deserves a mention because it's just perfect. It's just the perfect short little just...
Yeah, that kind of pre-recorded, just reaction.
And then
sound.
digitized a little. Oh, it's wonderful. All right, guys, it is time to rank this thing. BT, your turn to kick it off.
And my brains are on a cubic, but my heart's are saying like a gold. And I'm a little stuck. Yeah, look, I feel like, when we watch the cubics, we're like sitting there going, I can't believe how perfect this is. Whereas this, I can believe how perfect it is. And try saying my classic, saying them both out loud and feeling which is more true. I give this a cubic zirconia. I give this a gold.
Well, we say, gold's excellent, but cubic this is essential to the Simpsons experience.
Yeah, which is what brings me this more to a gold. I feel like it's not essentially, but that's what I thought I was feeling, but now I'm kind of swayed. I feel like the conversation has driven me. I'm going to go with a cubic and reserve the right to correct myself later.
How about you, Paul Goodman? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think essential to the Simpsons experience, it's going to have to be a cubic.
Yep.
That's the end of my thought.
Salt?
So, I'm going to go with gold for the simple reason.
Oh.
I know. It's horrible. But
No, I'm literally on the same. I'm still thinking about it.
it's the same thing with my 4 and 5 stars. I've got to hold something back. Because sometime, you never know, the stars may align and I might be back here talking about Last Exit to Springfield or Homer the Heretic or Lisa's First Words.
Yep.
One of the ones that really emotionally resonates with me. And I've got to hold something back for those. I've just got to have something to delineate those as being the absolute best. So, second best grade that I can possibly give for this one.
Can we come back and do an emotional trilogy next time? I think we did a vacation trilogy this time.
Where are you going to get those from the later seasons?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I get that point, and, I actually did a rewatch of this episode about, 6 months ago or something, and there was something that was a bit off about it to me, and I thought it was the production, because there are so many, off-character model moments that it can be a bit jarring, but I think I can forgive those sins because, of how impressive this episode is and, how much effort clearly went into it. And, you're absolutely right. The emotional core on this episode is kind of a bit wishy-washy, but I think, with the eloquence of the writing and the callbacks and stuff, it's just, a cubic for me. BT,
Cool.
I'm still debating. It's tough.
Are you going to blow it? It's a dull cubic either way. So.
I know, but it's still, I've got very few regrets on this podcast. One is giving Mountains of Madness too low, and the other is giving Hurricane Nettie too high. Oh. So, still not convinced either way. Damn it!
Well, it doesn't change the overall ranking either way you
I
go.
know,
so.
but that's not the point, Elliot.
It's not the BT
The integrity
ranking.
of my perfect discussion of The Simpsons is the point.
All right, well, averaging out, this will be a dull cubic zirconia. It'll be the 4th episode from Season 6 to be given this ranking. It'll be joining some choices that Elliot has problems with. Homer versus Patty and Selma. Bart of Darkness, where Bart breaks his leg.
great.
Millpool.
Love that.
Fuck. Yeah. So good. And Patty and Selma was You So Are Worse Than Hitler, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the slap, yeah.
And also Homie the Clown, which we reviewed last week.
Yes.
Oh,
God, that was good.
brilliant.
Yeah.
No, actually,
Fantastic.
You are going gold?
I think. Oh God, I was thinking about something
He's
like Homie the
already
Cloud,
dead.
which was just so rapid fire the entire time and amazing.
I'll give you 5 more seconds.
Ha! Gold, I think.
Oh,
God.
Jesus.
Gold.
3.
Gold.
Gold,
2.
just gold it for now.
Always
I will call
believe
Jordan
in
later if I need to.
Lovely little bit of Saltdale Ballet. I don't know. It's getting early late. All right,
It's getting
guys.
late early, guys.
Well, that brings us to the end of the Simpsons Index. Pauls, would you like to do some plugs?
Do it, Paul Plug.
Yeah. Go on then. Well, we're from a little podcast called One Good Thing. We probably said it at the beginning of the episode, but that was decades ago. We're available on every podcatcher I can think of, even Spotify. They let anyone in nowadays. You can follow us on Twitter at OGTPod, where we call out to the OG team for good things that you've seen about the bad movies that we watch. Join in that. Be part of the positive movement to find all the good things about the haunting of Sharon Tate. And I think that's it.
And recently we launched a Patreon as well, hey?
We did launch a Patreon, so to any of your listeners who have never heard us before, just sign straight up there. Don't even think about it.
What's there to think
it's
about?
great.
You're going to love it.
What's there to think about? Just laugh.
Just laugh and love. With us. The balls.
Just like
Yeah.
Homer's giggles.
And we have had you guys on for Mortal Kombat and Annihilation. And
I think you mean
Yep.
Mortal Kombat!
I do mean that. Yeah, you're right.
Please.
I apologise.
Using the King's English.
That was also a bloody great episode, so anyone who
yeah.
hasn't heard that already should definitely listen to that.
Yeah.
Absolute blast doing that podcast,
They
man.
get to hear me yell Mortal Kombat like 8 more times.
Yeah. Don't you mean... Oh, never mind.
And BT, our other podcast.
Yep, our other podcast is Thrones of Game, where we watch Game of Thrones backwards. I've already seen the entire show, but Elliot had never watched a single episode until we started watching in reverse order. Gives us a very unique spin on things, and it's pretty fun. We're up to... I think we're going to start the next season right now, actually.
Yeah. We're starting season 5, which of course is our season 4.
Yeah, we're going to watch something happen to Jon Snow. What could that be? I don't know.
Fantastic.
All right, thank you for joining us for the Simpsons Index at home, and thank you all the way from England, Paul Salt,
Thanks for having me.
and all the way from Melbourne, Paul Goodman,
I just want to entertain.
and all the way from right next to me, BT.
Ahoy hoy.
And I've been your host, Elliot Jay O'Neill. That's all the mustard in the house!
Thank you for listening to the Simpsons Index podcast, which is also an online spreadsheet available at thesimpsonsindex.com. You can chat to us online at facebook.com/thesimpsonsindex or at Simpsons Index on Twitter and Instagram. And now please stay tuned for the bonus scenes! Yep. Got to keep that bank of, that tank of chalk juice has got to stay filled.
Chalk juice?
I mean, talk juice. See, mine is drip feeding at the moment.
Here's the sinking process. 1,
2,
3,
4.
5.
6. That's that sinking feeling.
Yeah,
Nice.
Again, the latency's pretty good.
Bearing in mind, there was a slight delay on my 6 because I thought of the sinking feeling joke. And
Worth it.
can I just do one thing, sorry, which is that
sure.
the funniest ever Michael Cera cameo was Twin Peaks The Return? Weirdly, he shows up as like a leather jacket wearing free spirit badass, and it's the funniest fucking thing to happen. And it just happens right in the middle of this very serious, very mysterious episode of Twin Peaks, The Return, and it's the funniest fucking thing. That's how you make a Michael Cera cameo work.
Oh, wow.
That's how you Michael your Sarahs.
Where are you going now, son? Wherever the wind takes me. It was so funny.
We are like the dreamer who dreams and then lives inside the dream.
Senehit Beats.